Good afternoon, patrons, and welcome to the July sort of 2018 Patroncast. Oh yes. Yes, it is that time again, and oh blimey. Blimey, July has been difficult. And that's mainly just been the climate. It's been so flipping hot. Because let's just check off some things here. So I'm in England, so you know, as a people, we're not very used to heat, and our buildings aren't made for heat either, because they're all, you know, thick wall brick things that are designed to actually insulate and maintain heat as much as they possibly can. So it's, you know, it's already pretty bloody hot, but then you start factoring in all the recording things, which is, I've got myself a really nice fan. You know, we've got a couple of nice fans over here, but I can't have them on while I'm recording because you'd hear the noise in the background. So all the fans and all the rest of it go off, and to avoid, like, you know, sound creeping in from elsewhere, all the doors go closed. So basically, I just create myself a little walled-in little sauna when I settle down to record. And obviously, I've got, well, it depends when I'm recording. Like, consoles are the worst, because consoles are little radiators. They generate so much flipping heat, especially the PS4. The PS4 runs so hot, it's ridiculous. The Xbox One X is not quite so bad, and my PC, it depends how much I'm taxing it. But I've got two computers. I've got my new computer, there's my really nice one. That thing runs pretty cool, but still puffs out a fair bit of heat. So, you know, I've not got a fan on, and I have got something that's producing hot air. But as I say, consoles are the worst, and that's two reasons. And it's not just the console's puffing out heat, but I've got a capture card. It's actually built into the older of my two PCs. That PC's not so well put together. Ventilation's not so good. You know, I didn't know as much about how to put together a PC when I actually arranged that one. So, as a result, it's not really got spectacular cooling. It runs very hot. So I've got a console on, which is running hot, and I've got that computer on that's running very hot, and I've got a TV on that, you know, produces a little bit of heat, and I've got a monitor so I can keep an eye on things, and that's producing heat as well, and I'm in a closed sauna, and it's the middle of a heat wave. So it got to the stage where, like, you know, I was getting so sweaty while I was recording that, like, I would stop midway through recordings to change clothes. Yeah, that's something you didn't want to know, but now you know it, and now you can never not know it. That, yeah, I think actually I did it during a live stream as well. At one point, one of the live streams was so bloody hot, I was just saying, screw it, I'm just, you know, I'm just step away from it. I just announced, I'm taking off my clothes now, and just change over to something else. It's been mad. Luckily, the heatwave has broken for the time being, but apparently it's going to be back with a vengeance, so that's just going to repeat itself. Good month, July, though, despite the heat. Good month. In fact, not quite as good as it should have been. I think, like, the second best month we've ever had on the channel. Like, everything in theory suggests it should have been, like, the best month we ever had. Like, we had some great little stuff kicking off. We had The Crew 2, which is, like, the long-running series with me and Dan, which has been great fun. Like, interesting, it's not for everyone. Like, that's the thing. Like, some people really, really love it, and some people just don't get it at all. It's a real Marmite series. I mean, I think it's really, really great. But, like, I think some people don't like it because it's not the usual sort of thing that I do. But that's kind of what collabs are for. Collabs shouldn't really be for, like, you know, finding someone who's identical to you and just doing an identical thing to normal with two of you. Collabs should be about people who are complementary, not identical. And I think me and Matt and Dan actually work together really nicely because we're not the same, but we can bounce off each other quite effectively. So I think that works really, really well. I think it's a great little series that's kind of shaping up right now. So that started off there, and obviously it's alternating between my channel and Dan's channel, which has brought a lot of new subs in. We had Hitman 2. We had the Hitman 2 series. Oh, I love Hitman 2. I'm so glad I got to do that as a little mini-series. That was fantastic. We had the Community Day, of course, featuring some of you guys yourselves with the Darwin Project. That was great fun, and that went down nicely. A couple of just, like, random curveballs, like Impossible Creatures, went down really well. Autumn Leaves came to its conclusion, and we started off Dust. That's had a phenomenally big start. So yeah, we were well north of 5 million views in July, which is really, really good. But yeah, we had like nearly 7 million in June. And you might be thinking, well, that was just, you know, entirely off the back of Fallout 3's Better Than You Think. Except it wasn't really, because Fallout 3 is Better Than You Think is, well, at the exact time of recording this, which is on Is it Thursday? Oh, I've forgotten what day it is. I'm pretty sure. Yes, it's Thursday. It's definitely Thursday because I just went to see Ant-Man and the Wasp. Oh, I enjoyed that. That was good. I'm not sure it really worked as a cohesive whole, but like loads of really good scenes. Really enjoyed that. So yes, it's definitely Thursday. It's the downside of being a YouTuber because I kind of, I don't really kind of do weekends. I work pretty much every Saturday and Sunday. So like, you know, as I kind of work every day, you lose track of what day of the week it is because you just kind of work through 7 days a week. But wait, where was I going with this again? Ah, yes, I've just remembered. So yes, Fallout 3 is, at the exact time of recording, just shy of 2 million views. By the time you see this, it might have actually passed 2 million views. So as it's only just 2 million views now, it can't just be that. Because even if, like, you know, all those 2 million views were all in June, which they weren't, that would only be 7 million, like, over 5 million. So June would have already been a 5 million month on its own, which would already be really good, and June wasn't all of those views. Many of those are in July. So yes, July, a good month. In fact, you know, it's a spectacular month. It just doesn't look quite as good because it's after June, so it looks like it's declined, but June was just brilliant. Oh, it's been good. We've had some really good stuff, actually. We've had some really good stuff. I think we've had a fantastic July. And August is good as well, because you can really see this. Because, like, you know, Claire goes through all of Steam, finding games that look good, and then kind of shows them to me, and I kind of pick the ones out I think I can make good videos out of, and we try and get in contact with those devs and kind of, you know, get access to them a bit early so I have time to put videos together in time for the launch day. And you really notice during June and July, there's not much there. It's slim pickings. Like, there's a bunch of good stuff that comes out in spring, and then just, like, nothing really comes out in June and July. But, like, we hit August, and I just went through a bunch of these with Claire today, and, like, you know, there's so much more good stuff. Like, oh, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good. And there's, like, 6 really exciting good games coming up just, like, in the next few weeks that we're going to see if we can kind of get access to early. So, yes, good exciting stuff. Good exciting stuff all round. I think we just, yeah, just looking at it now, I'm really proud of July. There's so many good one-offs in there as well. Like, especially like, just during the last week. Like, Driver San Francisco, Tomb Raider, No Man's Sky. That was really viewed, by the way, into, like, you know, the Perfect Dark thing, and Insomnia the Ark during this week, and all of that. Yeah, this is kind of, this is something I've been trying to do a bit more, by the way. I've been trying to do kind of, like, less series and more exciting, good quality one-offs. So, technically, like, there's less videos floating around right now. Like, I'm aiming for, like, I don't know, 9, 10 videos a week rather than 11, 12, but you're getting more interesting, unique one-offs. So I think it's working. Like, the views are really high right now, so people seem to be liking it. Like, you know, these are the more heavily edited one-offs that used to be like the reserve of the Why Not Wednesday series, but now that's happening a lot, like all over the shop. Like, say, you know, like a week, 2 weeks ago, like Driver San Francisco was in that style, and so was Tomb Raider, and so was No Man's Sky to a certain extent. So yeah, I think it's working well. Oh yes, and of course, well, technically, Crusader Kings 2 didn't actually start in July. That started in mid-June, but July has kind of been a really reassuring month for that, because sometimes when you do a series, it starts off really strong, but you don't know how much it's gonna drop off. Like, you think, okay, the problem is, by the time I hit part 10, like, barely anyone might be left, but, like, you know, it's a really long game, so then there might be another however many parts. I've no clue how long Crusader Kings 2 is going to go on for. Like, you might be stuck for however many parts with no one watching, but no! Like, that's up to, what is it, part 10, 11, 12 or something, and that is going so well. Like, I thought it would do well. I thought it would do well. I didn't think it would do quite, you know, classic Total War well. And it's not quite done that, but then that's not really a fair comparison, because Rome Total War and the Medieval 2 Total War series we did some time ago, and both of them rank really well in YouTube if you search for Rome Total War or Medieval 2 Total War. So they've picked up a bunch of extra views from people who aren't subscribers. And Crusader Kings 2, actually, I felt kind of embarrassed about this. Kind of awkward and embarrassed, and we shouldn't really have done it. Right now, if, like, in Chrome Incognito, so this is properly done, verified at a proper kind of clean cookie window, if you actually search for Crusader Kings 2, last time I checked, our video is the top ranking one on YouTube, which I feel kind of bad about, because there's all these experts who are much better at the game than me, and I feel like they should be outranking us. But that means, yeah, the first part's got loads of views. So, yeah, that series is just doing phenomenally. I'm so glad, because I absolutely love it. I've absolutely fallen in love with that game. So that's really, really cool indeed. So, I'm just in a really happy place right now. Just in terms of, like, the sorts of videos we're making, the series we've got going on, what we're making, how many videos we're making, the sort of stuff we're putting on. I think the channel's in a great place. I think we've done some really fun work this last month. So, yeah, I feel very comfortable and at ease with the channel right now, it's a nice place to be. It's a nice place to be when you're not kind of worrying or stressing out or whatever. Because, like, sometimes if you've had, like, a couple of, not bad months, but, like, every month you think, okay, I'm doing these 2 series, but they're not actually doing that well. They're not really getting the views. And we had, you know, some good one-offs, but also a bunch of one-offs that kind of flopped. And the views are down on last month, and last month was down on the month before that. And the channel looks like it's kind of, you know, just losing interest a little bit. That can be a bit stressful because you start second-guessing yourself and doubting yourself. But, like, for the last 2 months, actually, I've been feeling really good and confident and comfortable with what the channel's doing, which is, yeah, it's a nice, relaxing place to be. Anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to some fun stuff, because we got some fun questions. And sooner or later, this room's going to start heating up, so I'm going to get to the questions now before I start roasting alive. Will you be doing a playthrough of Red Dead 2 when it comes out later this year? Well, of course. In fact, actually, I think Red Dead 2, that's been pushed back quite significantly, hasn't it? I mean, wasn't it, once upon a time, wasn't it actually scheduled for, like, end of last year? I swear that, like, once upon a time that was supposed to be coming out much, much sooner than it's currently actually scheduled for. I swear that slipped quite a bit. Because I did the original Red Dead thinking, okay, Red Dead 2, let's get ready for that. And I kind of thought they were going to be closer together, but Red Dead 2's just kind of slipped some more. So, yes, absolutely 100%. I will be doing so. The only thing I could see that would stop me is if, like, there's some sort of ridiculous thing, like it turns out to be, like, always online, it's like a stupid MMO or something. I don't know. Because, you know, the thing I loved about Red Dead 1 was the single-player campaign business. So short of them just doing something weird like that, and obviously I know that's a bit of an odd thing to say because you're probably, like, immediately, feveredly typing, but John, you enjoyed the single-player campaigns of Fallout. Fallout 76 is coming along, and you sound fairly positive about that. Yes, because that's not a main entry into the Fallout franchise. It's an experiment. And also because Red Dead 2, if it were to, like, you know, go heavily on the GTA Online style, I wasn't a huge fan of GTA Online. Like, it was fun, but I got bored of it really, really quickly indeed. Whereas some other online games, I actually kind of think, okay, I wish I could actually find, you know, more people to play this with more often. And sometimes it's not even like a mark of the game's quality or anything. Like, I just never got super into GTA Online. But, like, you know, I will, on a not a regular basis, just dip into Overwatch for a bit. I'm not desperately good at Overwatch, but I just enjoy dipping into it. And even though I fully acknowledge it, you know, could do with a lot more content and it's a bit empty and it's a foundation they're still building on, I personally really like Sea of Thieves, alright? I think Sea of Thieves is good and you can't take that away from me. So, short answer, yes, but it will likely be the campaign. But then again, if it's also anything like GTA, it's quite possible if they follow that model, they'll launch the campaign, then there'll be a brief pause, then they'll launch Red Dead 2 online. In which case, I'll probably do the campaign, see if I can do that before online comes out, and then give online a bit of a look-see together with some other YouTubers. I don't know who with at this exact moment in time. But short answer is yes. Is there a chance we could have more of Crusader Kings 2? I'm guessing what you mean by that is you want it more frequently. I think we're pretty much at a capacity of what we can do in that regard. You see, the problem is, well, it's very long. In case you hadn't noticed, the episodes are very, very long indeed. If I started putting out, say, 3 episodes of an hour and a half plus every week, I think there'd be a large number of people who simply would fall behind. And the moment you fall behind in a series, you think, oh, I can't watch this next episode because I haven't seen any of the last 3, so I need to catch up with the last 3. How long is that going to take? Oh, that's going to take 4.5 hours. You lose that person because that person has a very good chance of never actually catching up with you. And I don't want to lose people like that. I feel like right now we're putting out 3 hours-ish a week of Crusader Kings 2. And that actually represents about 5 to 6 hours of us actually playing the game, because it's normally about like 2.5 hours-ish I record, and that gets edited down to about an hour and a half. because I need to kind of, you know, just like look at things, think about things, spend a lot of time like looking over the Dynasty and the Character tab, and occasionally walking away to go and look up something online, because there's a lot of like really curious and intricate systems in Crusader Kings 2, so I need to go and like double check something to make sure I'm not saying something completely wrong. I mean, I do say things that are completely wrong all the time regardless, but it's still nice. It's still nice to be able to get some things right at the bare minimum. So I'm afraid the answer to that kind of has to be no, just because I think we'd start losing people. The only way it could go up to 3 times a week would be if I actually lowered the length of the episodes to like an hour or below, so you'd be getting exactly the same amount of content, just cut up more. So I'm not sure anyone, like, you know, particularly wants that, because there's not really any benefit to that. I mean, technically, I suppose I'd get slightly more ad revenue off the same amount of content, but like ad revenue is barely even significant anymore. We don't even like, I don't chase views anymore because there's no point. In fact, I never really chase views at all, to be honest. I was never a view chaser, but there's not really much point chasing views, because just ad revenue from ads running in front of videos is just, it's worth nothing these days. Like, you know, Patreon and YouTube Red and donations through Super Chat, through the live streams, like, you add those together, it's worth so much more than ad revenue. It's ridiculous. So, like, there's not really much point me view chasing in that regard. There's not much point me kind of, like, deliberately trying to throttle a series to make it, like, you know, large numbers of smaller episodes. I mean, I could take the exact amount of stuff I put out per week and put out 6 episodes of half an hour on like 6 of the 7 days. I could put out like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Could all have a 30-minute episode of Crusader Kings 2, and you'd be getting the exact same amount of Crusader Kings 2. Like, that's why you can't have more, because you've already got the equivalent of what any normal, sane YouTuber would make 6 episodes a week. So I'm afraid the answer has to be no, just because if we just put out too much more, people will drop out of the series because they'll fall behind, and that would kind of hurt the series overall. Dear John, please play Undertale. I already have, look it up. Honestly, oh, actually don't. If you're a massive fan, maybe don't, because while there's like things I really admire about it, like I find the story and the script really interesting, and I really like the score. It's got a phenomenal score. I never got super into it. I'm not a massive fan. Like, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that for me, it's not an absolute classic game. So that may sway your decision, but you can look that up and find that if you want. And To the Moon! Ah, I own To the Moon. I know for a fact that's in my Steam library. It's one of those games I've just kind of got on a long list to play at some point, because, like, you know, it's not a new release. It gets requested sometimes, but not a huge amount. So it's one of those games that sits on the long list. But unquestionably, at some point, you will see To the Moon, because it's one I've kind of had on my radar for quite some time. John, which big/AAA games are you looking forward to? I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey could be a fun series. Like, me and Assassin's Creed have an odd relationship, because I've never played an Assassin's Creed I actually don't enjoy. I always have fun with them, but I always get bored of them as well. I always kind of... in fact, have I ever finished a single Assassin's Creed game? I don't think I have. I think I've played just about all of them, aside from like some of the little ones like Liberation. But I don't think I've ever actually finished one. Like, I dive and think, oh, this is fun, I'm having a great time. But they lose me. Often because there's too much stuff. There's too much faff in them, and there's too many like little things to do, and they just lose me at some point, and I just find myself uninterested in going forward. But Odyssey, of course, has the unique thing that it's set in a time period and a setting I'm kind of, you know, particularly interested in, and perhaps somewhat uniquely qualified to comment on and talk about. So I think if there's one Assassin's Creed game that's likely to become a full proper series, it's Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So keep an eye out for that, because I think that could be a thing of interest, and I definitely think it's one I want to keep my eye on, because I've always enjoyed the franchise, and for once I might actually finish one as well. John, why do you not call your kingdom the Kingdom of Cornwall? Don't worry, I'm going to correct that. That's going to be corrected in a near part. And then something weird happened, which is that every time I saved and quit out and then reloaded the game, it reverted back to being the Kingdom of Wales. But then, like, afterwards, like, a couple of parts after that, it stopped doing that. And for some reason, now it's happy to stick as being the Kingdom of Cornwall. So don't you worry, that is going to happen. Also, about hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. Are you really that bad with guns, or were you doing it for comedic effect? A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Like, you know, the fake history lessons. and like, you know, some of the commentary and like the, you know, the fake stories I was telling about the guns. Obviously, I was making that up on the fly. I was just improvising that as I went. Obviously, I knew that was like fake made up stories, because I like just kind of fake making up nonsense stories as I go along. I like just kind of creating fake history and just kind of seeing where it goes. I never have an idea. I never know where it's going to go when I start those stupid fake nonsense stories, but I just enjoy them as an act of improvisation. Like the fake American history that was way, way, way back in Fallout 3, Kill Everything, part, what was it, 5 or 6, American History 101. Like, I think if I recall correctly, all of that, I didn't have a plan for any of that. I literally just kind of went into that and just started improvising that as I went. Like, that's kind of one of the things I really enjoy doing. Just on occasion, I'll just pick something and decide I'm just going to make up a stupid story about that, and I just go and just kind of keep talking until I decide, you know what, brain, that's enough. You can stop. No, brain, stop. Stop, brain, stop. So, like, those were fake, but, like, the actual gun itself, like, I don't really know how to interact with them. And it doesn't help that in VR, like, you know, you don't have access to your fingers. So what you've got in front of you is a fairly small, intricate machine. But what you've got in your hands are two large kind of VR paddles, effectively. So you're just kind of, like, vaguely pouring at the gun. It's quite difficult to sometimes interact with it precisely. Because, like, a thing like a gun, I think you're going to struggle to create a perfect VR experience until there are proper VR gloves where it perfectly tracks where each of your fingers is. Because until you've got that, it's going to be very hard to actually kind of, you know, properly interact with a small, delicate piece of machinery with lots of actual small parts. And, of course, until you've got proper force feedback. Like, I think the real breakthrough for VR in terms of like immersion is going to be when you've got VR gloves that have got force feedbacks. Like they've got somehow like, you know, little built-in motors or something where if like, you know, you're pushing against a wall in the game, somehow the VR glove has the ability to like push back against you and actually present like, maybe not like, you know, something that you couldn't physically push through, but like it presents resistance. Somehow VR is capable of offering resistance. So if you've got a gun in your hand, it feels like there is something actually sitting on the relevant finger. And again, I don't think they'd be able to do it with proper weight, you know, unless there's like some magic technology I'm unaware of. But like, you know, some way it just kind of represented pressure and resistance that you can actually feel in your hands. I think at that point that'll be a real breakthrough for VR. I think that'll be absolutely incredible. I mean, VR is already incredible. Like, it's amazing. And it's really interesting, actually, because one of the things that, like, I think this was actually a comment about Arc Park VR, was like, someone was like, oh god, stop, like, you know, faking and overreacting to the dinosaurs. And I saw that comment, I immediately thought, that is a person who has never actually tried a current generation VR headset. Like, because it's something that you cannot get across. So you can't get across until you've tried it, that your brain simply accepts it. Like, VR's not perfect, absolutely not. But the moment you've been in that headset for 30 seconds, as far as your brain is concerned, it is where you are seeing. To the extent where, you know, if you lean over a ledge in VR, you will feel it in your stomach, you will feel it in your legs. Your brain and your body are absolutely 100% on board with the fact that you are wherever the game is showing you that you are. It completely fools the brain. So when a giant dinosaur looms down towards you, sure, it doesn't look desperately impressive on a screen, but when you're in there, it is the most terrifying thing imaginable. It's absolutely flipping terrifying. But yeah, back to hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. Absolutely, there were things that I just had absolutely no clue about. Like, when I got the P90 and its stupid, weird ammo clip with, like, the circle at the top, like, I had absolutely no clue how these two things ought to fit together. Absolutely no clue whatsoever. So it was a blend of both, is the short answer. John, if you could live the rest of your life anywhere in the world, which country would you choose? Ooh, interesting question. Like, I'm guessing just for the sake of argument, you don't want me to say the UK, because, you know, for the most part, aside from when it gets stupidly hot, I'm pretty happy in the UK, really. So, you know, my boring answer would be the UK. But if you want me to actually pick a country that's not the UK, like, I probably might have said Australia, but then I remembered, 1, it's too hot, 2, the internet's slow, and 3, everything wants to kill you. Those are 3 quite big reasons, actually. So definitely not Australia. In fact, I've changed my mind. Probably Canada. I've got family there. It's, you know, it's a good developed country. Politically, it seems very stable, all things considered. It's nice and cool. It's lovely and cool. Yeah, I'll say Canada. If I have to say a country that's not the UK, I will go for Canada. I just moved across the country to Ottawa and found there's a Cornwall nearby. Do you have an ETA on when that will be integrated into the mighty Kingdom of Cornwall? You have my word. In the event that they ever release DLC for Crusader Kings 2 that lets you actually go over and attempt to colonise America, I will go and claim the Canadian Cornwall for Cornwall. Abso-flipping-lutely. Do you expect to ever do a full series for a VR game? What factors go into that decision? Ooh, interesting question. Very interesting question. I do not foresee a scenario where that will be a thing, at least for the minute. The key factor I'd say for that is simply that there is a big disconnect between playing a VR game and watching the recorded footage of someone playing a VR game. The two things are so different, and my reaction to what I'm seeing is going to be so different to someone else's reaction to what I'm seeing that it's difficult to foresee how that's going to work. Like, if there was going to be one game where I would have done it, it might have been Fallout 4 VR. But, like, even then, like, Fallout 4 VR didn't exactly get a ton of views next to normal Fallout. Like, loads of people decided to, like, tune in for, like, you know, a little bit. But once I kind of went on my little road trip, by the time we got to the end of it, there were not a huge number of views going on there. If there was one I think I might do, and quite frankly I'm amazed this doesn't exist already, it might be Dishonored 1 VR, which I don't know why it doesn't exist, because literally blink teleportation as a primary method of movement is already a function of the game. Why was that not a game Bethesda have VR'd? Why have Bethesda, in fact, VR'd literally every property they own other than flipping Dishonored 1? Okay, not literally every property they own, but, you know, quite a few of them. All vastly less appropriate properties have been VR'd, but not Dishonored. The one game that should blatantly have become a VR game. Because Dishonored 1 is... it's not very long. If you do, like, one mission per part, then the whole thing's wrapped up in, like... what is that? 8, 10 parts? Something like that. So, it wouldn't be long. It would be very well suited to VR. Lots of the missions are very different. Plenty of them are actually very short. If you're not, like, kind of chasing loads of money, they're actually kind of quite short to get through, so it wouldn't be particularly long. If there was ever a game I'd do a full series in VR of, I think it would be that one. But of course, as you may have noticed, that game doesn't actually exist, and there's no reason to believe it's going to exist for some baffling reason. But yeah, it would need to be something that would be not too long, and something I think I already knew to some extent, something that was already familiar to a lot of the audience, and something that I think would really fundamentally work well in VR, which I think Dishonored 1 really, really would. Since you have the conversion DLC, does that mean when you're done with Crusader Kings 2, you plan on continuing in Europa Universalis 4? I will make that decision at the time. It's a really difficult decision to make, because it also depends, like, what the situation is. Because if I end up in, like, a weird situation where, like, you know, the Empire of Cornwall is the dominant super faction in the entire world or whatever, and it, like, dominates all of Western Europe, then it would be really weird to bring it. But actually, can you even bring forward custom empires into Europa Universalis 4? I don't even know if you can. I don't know whether that integrates, because, yeah, at some point I'm going to bother to install Charlemagne, just so I've actually got access to the custom empires, because at some point I don't know whether it's going to be, like, my end game goal to have, like, a proper empire, but I definitely would like to have an empire at some point. That sounds fun, especially as it would be, I think, only the... is it only the third empire in the entire game, assuming no one else forms one? Because, yeah, there's the Byzantines and the Holy Roman Empire. I'm not sure there is a third one that actually starts off on the map. So it'd be potentially, yeah, quite fun to actually create the third empire and it be the Byzantines and the Holy Roman Empire and Cornwall. I'm not sure if you even can bring those forward. If I kind of end up, like, having too much land, I don't think I would, because I think that might, like, potentially unbalance the game, and I think it might be more interesting to start afresh. I mean, what I will say is, if I were to bring it forward, I wouldn't play as Cornwall. I would treat Cornwall as like one of the, you know, big, powerful mega factions that actually needs to be, you know, dealt with by me. So I'd probably go back and play as a really small faction and work my way up, and, you know, perfect world, I'd probably end up in a war with Cornwall, like in a massive coalition with other people against Cornwall, and we'd have to bring down the might of Cornwall together. That would be fun. That would be kind of like a fun twist to it. So if it were to go that way, I think that's how I'd kind of try and play it and try and spin it. So maybe I'm not sure, but if I did, I wouldn't be playing as Cornwall myself. Putting aside any logistical or financial hurdles, if you could visit anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? Ooh, I'm not sure whether this is kind of a cheat answer, but I've always wanted to like do one of those space flights, just because I'd really like to experience 0G before I die. And I don't know whether that's going to be, like, you know, in the realm of affordability within my lifetime. Because sure, space tourism is starting to shape up, but it's still, like, you know, very much for the hyper-rich and celebrities and whatever. And also, it's kind of a weird thing for me to kind of want, because I really don't enjoy aeroplanes. I'm slightly claustrophobic. Don't like airports, don't like aeroplanes, don't really like going on planes somewhere. But yeah, no, I'm kind of saying, oh yeah, my perfect holiday destination would be an aeroplane for a bit, except like, you know, a space plane or a spaceship, if you will. But yeah, I would love to experience 0G within my lifetime. So I kind of hope that does become affordable, even if we don't, like, you know, have proper colonies that people are actually moving out to elsewhere in the galaxy or whatever. Like, at the bare minimum, I hope that space tourism, just like, you know, low orbit or high orbit or whatever it is that you need for 0G, that starts becoming a thing that's, you know, more affordable to the average person, because I'd like to give that a go. That just sounds fun. Good day, John. Are there any games you've played recently which you've enjoyed but you've chosen not to make a video of for YouTube? Nothing of that nature. The one thing that's kind of, well, sorry, I'm going to answer a very similar question because it's the best way I can answer, like, you know, the question at all. There is a game I wanted to put on YouTube, but found that I couldn't, which is one of the games that's available on Origin is The Saboteur, which is, maybe cult classic might be a bit generous, but it's a well-loved game from a generation, maybe a generation and a half ago, which was, I think it was originally on like the 360 generation. And that's available through Origin. I was always curious, because like when you go through the list of games in Origin, like Origin curated it, kind of arranged it, and it put The Saboteur right at the bottom, which is odd. Because like I thought, oh, a lot of people would be nostalgic for that one. Why is that one down there? So I downloaded it, and I played it, or rather I tried. The problem is, The Saboteur is pretty much broken. On any PCs with, I think it's like more than 4 cores or something, it will just not run. It just basically refuses to run. And there's some complicated workarounds, but I couldn't quite figure them out. So I thought, you know what, this isn't worth the fuss. I'm gonna try and just do something else instead. So The Saboteur was supposed to be a video this last month, and that didn't actually happen. So that's kind of unfortunate. There's another game that I kind of briefly tried, but I thought, oh, that's going to be way more work than I thought it's going to be to actually get done. So I'm not going to do that now, but I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I'm going to do it later. Alright, I'm going to do it later, so I'm not going to spoil it. There's another game, actually, it's another game on Origin. I'll give you that much. It's another game on Origin that I downloaded and thought, you know what, this would be a fun little one-off video. And I thought, you know what, this actually requires a fair bit more setup. So there might be another fun classic game off Origin you'll see at some point, but not just yet. Just need a bit more time to work on that. With all the pre-playing and pre-planning you do before you get a game ready to play, how much of the gameplay do you burn just to get to the point to make a video? You are right, there is a fair bit of that. So let me give you an example from like just the other day. So Insomnia the Ark had a prologue. So I played that off camera. That took about, I think, half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes if a game is like, you know, if it's got like a fairly unique set of interesting, complex mechanics, I could play it for anything up to 2 or 3 hours just to get to grips with it before we actually start. Then we actually start recording, and then I'll often record for somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 hours, and then we look to edit that down to a normal video, which can be anything from half an hour up to a bit more than an hour. Sometimes they go on a bit, like, say, looking back, like, This Is the Police 2 was weirdly long. Like, it was odd that ended up at 1 hour 40, but the simple reason is I wanted to include one of the XCOM style missions, and it just took that long to get to one. That was with huge amounts cut out. Like, I think the original of that was like 3 hours, 3.5 hours or something. There was so much story. It was insane. There was just so much flipping story and so many cutscenes and so much slightly overwritten dialogue. It's a good game, but it's kind of... it's slowed down and bogged down by its own slightly bloated story, which was a bit of a shame. So sometimes it can be anything up to, you know, if you factor all of them together, it could be 6 hours. 6 hours of actually playing and recording just for a single video, and that's before we actually start editing. So you're right, it can actually be quite a lot of time for the right game. And Crusader Kings 2, as a series, I played for about, I think, 20 odd hours and did an awful lot of reading online around it too before I even began. And even then I made a lot of mistakes because that game is very, very complicated. It's not desperately new player friendly. I'll say that much. So that took a fair bit of work to prepare for, but that's kind of, well, I'd say that's about as bad as it gets, but then there's Fallout 4 You Only Live Once, and I don't even want to know how many hours I've put into kind of, you know, planning and preparing and doing some tests for that. That's gonna be a lot by the time it's done. You can replace the cast of any movie with the Muppets, keeping one of the human actors. What movie and which human do you keep? Ooh, interesting question. You know what I'd really love to see? I would flipping love a Muppets Avengers. I would like the Muppets take on the Avengers. Maybe just like, you know, just do the Avengers 1, as it's a fairly simple to the point movie. If you just want to do like a generic Muppet superhero parody, you go right ahead. And which human to keep though? Which human to keep? I'd be tempted to keep Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, trying to, like, you know, oversee Muppet Shield and the Muppet Avengers. Yeah, you know what? I like that idea. Let's stick with that. John, in Crusader Kings 2, have you had a look at the societies yet? Ah, you're a bit late to the party. By the time that you see this, if I recall correctly, yes indeed, we should have started looking at precisely that. Yeah, I kind of like had in my mind, I just kind of wanted my first kind of, you know, long ruling king, John, just focus on getting to grips with the core game, and then, like, you know, we'd introduce the societies, maybe like one society per ruler going forward. So that's kind of vaguely what I have in mind, but it kind of depends like what kings show up, because some of them might not be appropriate. So it's going to be whatever works in service of the story. Like, in Crusader Kings 2, everything is just in service to the overall story. So we've already started, and I'm just going to see what shows up in future, and, like, you know, how logically we roll that forward. So the answer is yes. I do absolutely want to look at them, because they're very, very fun indeed, and they do, like, you know, generate some really fun, unique events to make each reign very different. John, which of your one-off videos did you most enjoy making this month? Ooh, that's an easy one. Drive to San Francisco. Except when you say, like, this month, I assume you mean actually, like, you know, the month this refers to, which is the month of July. So, yes, Drive to San Francisco. The thing about that is, there's a lot of cut footage. There's a lot of cut footage because I just enjoyed smashing cars into other cars so much. I just did that over and over and over again, and it's not the most efficient way to play the game at all. So the chase missions, I just did them over and over, and I was determined to basically win them by doing nothing other than taking over other cars and just smashing them into the police. So, like, I think the original footage of that was, like, 3 hours long, and then I cut it down to, like, I can't remember what it was now, like, 35, 40 minutes, because, like, so much of it was just me doing the same chases over and over and just continually smashing civilians into police cars. And it never stopped being funny to me. How is Tabby managing in the heat? We're not sure, because she doesn't really complain. Like, we've tried, like, you know, putting ice packs wrapped in towels down next to her, but she seems to just ignore them, has no interest in, like, going up to them. So, hopefully, she's okay. She's spending a lot of time in the shade. She goes and finds her favourite little shady spot in a little nook, and she likes sleeping there. So, hopefully, she's okay. We're also giving her extra water. We're kind of mixing some water in with her wet food, which she seems to enjoy lapping up as some form of, like, you know, meat cordial water. Sounds disgusting, but she seems to absolutely flippin' love it. Also, Claire, roll the tabby pictures. Oh, she's such a good cat, though. What have been your favourite collaborations to make? I still think the best one I've ever done is probably actually the Sea of Thieves video with Dan, Mataphobia, and Up Is Not Jump. I think that was great. I think that was a really good one with lots of really amazing moments. I mean, the GTA heists were great as well with Dan and Amy and Dad Cubes. Those were some great little videos too. Like, I think there's some really fantastic moments in there. I think the Crew 2 is really good. The Crew 2 is a bit different because the Crew 2, being more of a road trip, isn't really built around set pieces. It's just kind of built around just kind of this long running, well, road trip, understandably. But like, you know, there's not like big explosive action bits. It's built around. It's just us going down a road while interacting with each other, which is also why, as I said earlier, like, you know, it's really love it or hate it stuff. Some people absolutely adore it, I think it's amazing, and some people are not into it. But yeah, I personally think it's the Sea of Thieves one. And do you prefer hosting a collab or being invited onto another channel? Well, really the best way to do it is if you kind of like, you know, get multiple stuff out of it and then you kind of split it, which is exactly what we're doing with the Crew, with me and Dan, where it's now being split between two channels. That's kind of the optimal way, because then the channels, like, it's the best way to make channels cross-pollinate, and then, like, you know, everybody benefits from that. So that's kind of the best way to do it. So generally, if it's like, you know, a mutual thing where every channel involved is going to get at least one video out of it, that to my mind is the best way. After you finish Crusader Kings 2, haha, good luck, which Paradox grand strategy game will you play next? I'm pretty sure it's going to be Europa Universalis 4. Like, it makes sense to me to kind of go through in chronological order. So, unless, of course, because, you know, there have been vague mutterings about the possibility of Crusader Kings 3 at some point. You know, by the time I finish Europa Universalis 4, it might be time for Crusader Kings 3. So, therefore, we might kind of, you know, hold off on Hearts of Iron 4 for the time being to do Crusader Kings 3, if that exists at that point. Or, of course, at some point Stellaris will have a major refresh and I'll go back into that. So one of the above. It kind of depends what's going on, because it's going to be a long series, so we're kind of projecting a long way out into the future there. So short answer, I don't really know. Would you ever do a no trading run of a Fallout game? Honestly, probably not as a full series, because I don't think that's... I mean, like, it's, you know, it's an interesting restriction. I'm just not sure it's interesting enough to justify a full series, which would be quite a long-running thing. Like, maybe I could mix it into a different rule set at some point, so, you know, I could mix it into something else. Like, you know, say, for example, I'm toying with the idea of Fallout 4 You Only Live Once featuring the additional rule that I'm not allowed to use any guaranteed legendary spawns. So, you know, I can't just rush straight to the vault to get Overseer's Guardian, and I can't just rush straight to Dance to get Righteous Authority, and things like that. I think that's a fun addition on top of the You Only Live Once rules. I'm not sure no trading on its own is enough to make a challenge run, but I might mix it into something else at some point, certainly. Are there any plans for any Why Not Wednesdays to return or get a one-off episode? Well, as I was actually discussing earlier, like, to my mind, the reason why Not Wednesday doesn't really exist anymore is because, like, every video is a Why Not Wednesday. Like, if you just take Drive to San Francisco and put a new intro over the front of it, that could be a why. In fact, you know what? I'm going to give you that right now. Hang on, just like, make a note of what I'm about to say now. Record it if you'd like, you know, cut this bit out of the audio, and then just, then you can just put that in place of the current intro to Drive to San Francisco, and you will have a new one on Wednesday. So just... Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is Mini Intruder, and welcome back to Why Not Wednesday! Yes, the series is back again with Driver San Francisco! There you go. There you go. So now you've got that. So you can just play that, and then you can just skip forward to the beginning of Driver San Francisco, just after I said whatever the actual intro was, and Why Not Wednesday, back again. But yeah, the short version is, like, I think basically the sorts of videos that used to make up Why Not Wednesday are now regularly on the channel, just like all over the shop. I don't want to restrict them to Wednesdays, because if I did, you'd get less of them. Now you get them on, like, Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays and all over the flipping shop. I'm absolutely loving the new Ultimate Road Trip collaboration so far. It has a definite old-style Top Gear feel to it. Ah, you see? There's one of the Lovets. Marvellous. If you were forced to compete in the Ancient Olympic Games, what event would you compete in and how well do you think you'd do? Well, I'd probably approach this strategically, because there's quite a few very dangerous events in the Ancient Olympics. Like chariot racing, pretty bloody dangerous. Boxing in a society that hadn't really, like, you know, mastered the art of proper boxing gloves or, you know, particularly firmly enforced rules about how to box. Very, very dangerous. Wrestling, extremely bloody dangerous. So I'd probably go for one of the events where even if you actually completely fail, you don't die. So, you know, one of the foot races or the discus throw, because then I'd do absolutely terribly, but at least I wouldn't die. Now, if I had to go for the event where I thought I could do the best out of the events in which I wouldn't die, I'd probably go for I'd probably go for one of the shorter running events. I'd probably go for a 200-meter running event, because back when I was in school, I was not actually that bad at the shorter distances. I was not terrible at like 200 and 400 meters at all. I was pretty quick back in those days. I haven't actually kind of, you know, done that distance running for some time, but I would hope I wouldn't be absolutely flipping dreadful at least. If you could design a Hitman level for IO Interactive under the assumption of it being for a modern Hitman game, where would you have it set? What would be some of the opportunities? Ooh! So, they could never do this one, so this is my answer, so I can basically just give the ones they could never do. I would have them do it at Disneyland. Though I guess there'd be nothing to stop them doing it like a theme park. Technically, they've already done a theme park, because it was a rundown theme park that was the training level of Blood Money. But I want them to do a proper big theme park. And Perfect World, I'd want them to actually do Disneyland, where the target would basically be coming to Disneyland with their family, and, like, you know, they would actually have a routine where they would go and they'd, you know, they'd go to a restaurant and buy some food, and, you know, they'd have a go on some carnival stands, and they'd go on, like, you know, a roller coaster and a log flume and all of that business, and, like, that would be their routine. They'd just kind of do that in a massive loop, and then, you know, you could get them on the roller coasters, and if you wanted, you could, like, sabotage the entire roller coaster, and some of, like, the roller coasters might have, like, you know, special effects, like, there'd be, like, you know, as you go through, like, little bursts of fire that you could turn up, just like you could do in, like, the party level, the one with the devil, the angel and the devil, what was it called? Dance with the Devil in Hitman Blood Money, where you could turn up the intensity of the flames to set the female target in the basement on fire. In that mission, you could do kind of that with, like, some little pyrotechnic displays around all of that, or you could make the brakes fail, but then obviously there'd be a load of extra spare casualties as well. Ooh, a really fun opportunity would be you should be able to make it so that you can sabotage the roller coaster in such a way as it goes off the rails while he's not on it. You can just do it anytime you want. So after the roller coaster, like, goes mental and the brakes fail, it derails, and, like, there'd be a special achievement if you could actually kill him by hitting him with the car when it comes off the rails, so he isn't even on it. He just gets kind of taken out as collateral damage. That'd be beautiful. Oh, that would be so good. Yes, make that happen. I was surprised to see that Claire follows They Might Be Giants on Twitter. Can I assume you're a fan, Claire? I believe she is, but I will let Claire answer on that one.
Yes, I really enjoy They Might Be Giants. I love the music. Our John, actually introduced me to They Might Be Giants many years ago, so I would also have to say that Flood is my favorite album, because that's the one I heard first, and it has a special place because of that.
And what's your favourite They Might Be Giants album, John? I'm afraid I'm a bit of a boring traditionalist, so I just have to say Flood. Flood is a fantastic album, and I love it.
As for the Johns from the band, I don't think I have a favorite, but it is my new favorite thing that our John, like, misread your question like that and also answered it, so now you know.
Hi John, in your massive spreadsheet of games to play, do you have a column recording the number of times that a particular game has been suggested? If so, does the list auto-sort games with more suggestions to the top? Oh no! Sadly, it's not as sophisticated as that. It's just a great, big, long list of games. Though, on occasion, if I kind of just want to vaguely get a feel for something, if it's a more popular, well-known game, I'll go to one of the suggestion threads, like the subreddit has a game suggestion thread, and I'll see if, like, it happens to show up there, and if it has shown up there, whether it's picked up a bunch of upvotes. Because though it's very unscientific, it just gives me a vague idea of whether something's really in demand, a bit in demand, or not in demand at all. I've noticed a distinct lack of low-effort first, nth, notification squad, nth, liked before watched, etc. comments on your videos. Do you have to do a lot of deleting of that stuff? Not really. I don't really do that sort of thing, and for the most part I think it's just because our community skews a little bit older and a bit more mature, so there's less that sort of thing. I've never minded those sorts of comments, to be honest, because I don't think anyone really wants to be, well, no one wants to be the first proper comment, if you know what I mean. So a bunch of people who just dive in and provide just like, you know, 10, 12 comments that are fairly low effort comments, they just show up immediately. It kind of breaks the ice a little bit, and I think it therefore provides a more comfortable environment for people who want to make high effort comments to start commenting. So personally, I've never even really noticed or minded them. I think it's actually not so much anything I do. I think it's actually something YouTube do. YouTube are actually pretty good at this, because these days the default is comments aren't arranged by newest or oldest first. Comments are arranged by top first by default. So as a result, YouTube basically curates the comments to arrange them in a sensible way. Though if I actually, it's not even that I pin a comment. If I pin a comment, it's guaranteed to be at the top. If I mark that I like a comment, not as in like voting it up, as in I'm marked as like a favourite, it tends to go up to the top. It's not guaranteed. Sometimes I've seen them as low down as third, but it tends to basically be guaranteed to rise up to the top or very close by to the top. So I can have a slight effect on things that way. And YouTube does a decent job of bringing upvoted, high effort comments to the top anyway. So for the most part, it's not so much they're not there, it's just you're not seeing them because they just kind of, they sink to the bottom pretty quickly. This is actually something YouTube actually does pretty well. If you could have the Fallout franchise visit somewhere else in the world and timeline, where and when would you like to see? As someone did actually reply to you, I've covered this a few times before. The short version is, I would actually like to see the UK, not just, you know, out of sheer, yay, UKism, but purely because I think it would be an interesting environment, because while we do have plenty of guns floating around the countryside in forms of hunting and pest control, they're a lot less common. So I think it would create a much more interesting and fairly unique dynamic insofar as, yeah, guns would be extremely rare and ammo would be extremely rare, and it would create an interesting dynamic between, say, surviving parts of the army and the police force and surviving civilians and surviving rural civilians who might actually have access to some types of firearms, and the sort of societies that would be likely to emerge out of that. So I've said that before and I stand by it. It was nice to see the creator of Fallout 4 Frost commenting on your playthrough. Considering you're now doing another playthrough of one of his mods, have you been in personal contact with the creator? I have not. I have not actually. He's commented on occasion, but he's never actually like reached out to me personally. And I know for a fact that the guy who developed Autumn Leaves, he also left a very nice comment. So while I rarely have like, you know, significant like private correspondence with these individuals, typically when there's a fairly major, well-viewed playthrough of their mods, they tend to kind of realise and show up just to kind of say thanks or whatever. Well, I assume they say that. They wouldn't say that if I trashed the mod, but I've never actually trashed a mod. Because if there was like a mod I played and I just didn't enjoy it, I just would delete the footage and it wouldn't be a thing. Because I just don't really believe in like trashing stuff that's made by small teams, whether that be in the form of an indie game or a mod. Like, I think if it's a AAA, it's more fair game to hold it up and say, look, these are the flaws. There are big problems with this, because this is a game with a lot of marketing spend behind it that a lot of people might be excited for, and a lot of people are going to spend a lot of money on because they're expensive games. So I think it's fair to call out problems there. But as a general rule, indies, mods, and stuff like that, like, if I don't like it, it just doesn't get a video. That's pretty much how it goes. So I recently learned that Far Harbor is also not gated to level or plot progress. Another low-level challenge run, perhaps. Indeed, it's kind of two that I'm just kind of keeping in my back pocket. There is the possibility of, say, level 1 Dead Money and level 1 Far Harbor are two things I've never done that, you know, at some point I could do as some small challenge runs. Both of them would be fun for their own reasons. So absolutely at some point, yes. Did you ever end up finishing Inside for yourself? I know a few of us were pushing for you to see the end. I didn't actually play through to the end myself, but I was kind of curious where it was going, so I looked up someone else's playthrough on YouTube, and I was deeply confused. I'm genuinely not sure what was supposed to happen there. So then I went back and kind of started watching from the bit of the game I got to, just to see if I could, like, you know, make sense of it the whole way through. And I watched the whole thing from where I got to through to the end of the game, and I do not understand what the hell was going on. I genuinely don't get it. I was so confused. Hi John, this is a question about queue etiquette. Ooh, my favourite types of question. There's a cafe near my office that sells made-to-order sandwiches, coffee, tea, pastries, quick items and such. When you buy a sandwich, you're given a slip with a cost on it. You need to take that to the checkout person. I'd gotten my sandwich, a drink and a pastry and queued up, and in fact had 2 people behind me when I realised I left the sandwich slip by the pastries cupboard. I got it and then was let back into the queue in my old spot. I was glad of that, of course, but I also felt guilty. After all, it was my own fault I'd left the sandwich slip there, and I'd voluntarily left the queue to get it. On the other hand, the ladies behind me didn't seem to mind letting me back in. Do you think I did something wrong? I don't think you did something wrong, but that is really an absolute marginal case right there. I personally would probably have left the queue, retrieved the sandwich slip, gone to the back of the queue, and only taken my original place if I was invited to do so by the 2 ladies. So I think that's probably my solution to the problem. But if you did so, and you're very confident that there was no objection from them, I don't think you actively did anything wrong. I think, it's a difficult situation. I understand that was quite the moral quandary. What the heck is light Ribena? Nothing light is ever as good as the... Oh, I love light Ribena. Light Ribena's great, I'm sorry. Light Ribena, I think Light Ribena's better than original Ribena. Like, this is probably just me getting very old at this point. But, like, I can't stand original Ribena anymore. It's too intense for me. I need nice light Ribena, alright? Light Ribena is good stuff. Have you ever considered doing a Medieval 2 playthrough on your channel, either as an edited series or a live stream, with Russia as the faction? Interesting thing about Russia, I personally don't find them that interesting. Just because I actually don't know why people say it's the hardest faction either. I disagree. I don't think it's the hardest faction at all. Because the thing is, you've got nothing coming at you from the north. And you've got nothing coming at you from the east until one of the hordes shows up. And even then, only a 33% chance they're going to spawn basically on your borders. And you've got a very secure southern border because there's a lot of kind of sea floating around there and also a lot of mountains that you can clog up with a couple of forts. So it's very, very difficult to attack you, which basically just means you have the option to just roll west. And once you kind of get yourself going and build out a fair few just kind of castles and cities and whatever, and you just get some trade going on, it's pretty easy to just steamroll through Western Europe. I think kind of, the factions over there will pose no problems whatsoever. Holy Roman Empire is often no problem at all. Once you get to that stage and they're in trouble, you can take Denmark and the small factions around northern Italy and run straight into France. I think it would actually be quite an easy one, all things considered. Especially as in the early game, they get the, the Woodsmen, who have, like, Defense 1, but, like, Offense 12 and their armor piercing, which are crazy good, because they're so cheap, so the elite troops that other factions start with, that should be their solid defense against kind of early aggression, you can just basically keep tossing Woodsmen at them, and they'll be able to actually just kind of eventually just chop through any number of dismounted knights. So dismounted feudals that other factions start with will eventually just fall to you. I personally don't find it an interesting campaign. It's a huge landmass, so you spend a lot of time just moving troops around. The difficulty is reinforcing and bringing in new armies, because it takes so long to actually move troops from one side of the empire to the other. I don't think it's difficult, I just think it's a little bit fiddly and frustrating. So I don't necessarily think that's going to be a thing. If Medieval 2 returns at this point, I think it would be one of the Kingdoms expansions, because the Kingdoms expansions do some really fun, interesting new mechanical stuff, and also lots of people have never seen them. So I think that would be a fun challenge. John, how do you like the colour filter on dust? I think it's alright when it works. Sometimes it's a bit much, to be honest. Like, I can see the appeal of, like, having, like, the layer of dust in the air hanging so thick that it negatively impacts visibility. Sometimes it kind of, I think, is a little bit too much, and sometimes the sky just kind of doesn't work properly. Like, on a couple of occasions, like, I've just stepped outside and the skies just refused to be an appropriate colour for the colour filter around the rest of the land, and it's just looked really, really odd. Generally, give it a couple of minutes and it'll fix itself. Like, I think it's interesting. Personally, I think I prefer the snow work in Frost, which didn't rely so heavily on adding in lots of fogging. Because, in general, I think video games have been massively improved by, us not depending on fogging to hide draw distance anymore. And though there are actually some minor draw distance issues with New Vegas, even if you kind of max out the draw distance bars under all circumstances, I think, we don't need to hide New Vegas away in that much fog. I think, you know, it's nice sometimes. Sometimes it might be a tiny bit overdone. Could you sing happy birthday to my sister? Why, yes. Yes, I absolutely can. And thank you for what I assume is a phonetic guide to the surname there. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jasmine Isinger. Isinger? I think Jasmine Isinger. Happy birthday to you. There you go. Happy birthday, dear Jasmine, anyway, from Ben, who is presumably your brother because, you know, he requested it for his sister Jasmine. So I'm hoping Ben's your brother, otherwise something's gone very Crusader Kings 2 there. In a previous Patroncast, you mentioned Oryx and Crake. Have you read the other 2 books in the trilogy? Oh, I've been meaning to. Did I read, I think I read one of them. Wait, did I read... I think I read one of them. But now I can't remember anything that happened in it. I think I've read one of the 2, but I didn't know there was a third. So I'm going to need to look that up. So, thank you for the reminder. Have you ever played Super Meat Boy? I actually have never played it myself. So, as a result of that, yeah, it would definitely be a welcome little one-off at some point or other. I've kind of had it on the long list for quite some time, so you know what? Be patient, keep your eyes open, it'll show up sooner or later. Which Roman Emperor would you like to have dinner and a conversation with and why? Oh, well, it has to be my favourite, Claudius. Claudius, the most sensible of all the Roman emperors, the guy who didn't want to do stupid, pointless invasion, aside from that one slightly stupid, pointless invasion, but don't worry about slightly stupid, pointless invasion. But for the most part, he didn't. For the most part, he did sensible things. Sensible things, damn it. Infrastructure, hooray! I'd like to sit down with him. And I'd just like to, mainly, so I can give him a hug and tell him it's okay. I appreciate you. I know everyone in your time zone hates you, but I appreciate you. History's going to be pretty kind to you, all things considered. John, I'm starting university this fall, and I know you happen to be quite good with languages, so I was wondering if you have any tips for learning a language more easily, study methods or something like that. Well, as someone who studies ancient languages, which are quite regular, like, my advice would be make sure you nail the building blocks of the language before you jump into anything like, you know, vocabulary or stories or idioms or whatever. Make sure you fully understand the foundational aspects of the language. Absolutely understand all of your cases and your tenses and figure out as much of the language as you can in terms of knowing how it works when it's regular. Now that's going to work for some languages rather than others, because some languages are very regular. Latin is hugely regular. Some languages are very much not, in which case that might not work so much. But even though you didn't actually address that to Claire, I'm going to hand over to editing Claire now anyway, because I can only speak to ancient languages. And ancient languages, we're never taught to speak them because, you know, there's no one to speak them to. They're kind of dead. Claire, meanwhile, has taught herself to be fluent in a living foreign language that she can actually converse in freely. So she can probably advise you a lot better.
The thing that helped me the most with learning English was to immerse myself in it, like in a cultural sense, like reading books and watching movies in English and also listening to audiobooks. I think it always helps when you're trying to learn something to like make it as much as you can about something that you really enjoy. So if the language learning process is a little difficult for you, like putting it in the context of stuff that you already love, like trying to find audiobooks or physical copies of your favorite books in the target language and then reading that, I found that really, really helpful.
Pancakes or waffles? Oh, don't make me choose. It depends what mood I'm in. I love both of them equally. I won't pick between my children. Is We Happy Few a game you've had your eye on? Well, actually, I've already played it. I played it once when I think it first entered early access, and I was really disappointed with it at that point. But just like with No Man's Sky, I've heard a lot of really good work has been done with it. So, as it's actually about to be, you know, entering a new stage of its life in I think about 2 weeks from now, I absolutely am planning to give it another look-see at that point, yes. John, have you realised that because toy dinosaurs are made of plastic, which is made from oil, we're technically still playing with real dinosaurs, they're just a bit old and liquidy? That's a really good point. Ooh, I like that. John, I was wondering what a typical day for yourself, Claire, and most importantly, Tabby looks like. Well, what often happens is we start a bit later because our whole day is like slightly skewed to run late, because as many of you who like follow me on Twitter will know, like I'm still often dealing with channel-y stuff at like 1 a.m, 2 a.m. UK time. So I often go to bed really late, and as a result I get up a bit late. So I'll get up, have a quick bit of breakfast, and while I'm doing that I'll just turn on my computer, I'll look at emails, tweets, just check in with Reddit and the Discord just to make sure everything's as it should be over there, have a quick shower, get into work. And typically how I kind of like to try and do things is I try and record like at least 2 things in a day. Try and record at least 2 videos in a day. One of those videos then will typically go to Claire, and one of those videos will be one I'll edit myself. So it might be, you know, stuff that goes over to Claire might be one-offs that are a bit simpler, or one of the series. So I might record like a bit of New Vegas, or I might record a bit of Crusader Kings 2. And yeah, the one-offs that I'll handle will be the more complicated, heavily edited ones. So for example, like Insomnia, just the other night, I recorded that and edited that myself. And I think if I recall correctly, the same day as I recorded that, I also recorded, what did I make that day? I think that day, that day I also made something else I can't acknowledge yet because it's not out until next week. But there's a one-off coming out on, I think, Tuesday, if I recall. Hang on. Which day is it next week? It's currently scheduled for Tuesday, but it might actually change. That one went over to Claire, and she edited that one. So I try and do, like, at least 2 videos a day. Like, if I can do more, that's great. Like, if I'm sitting down to do a series, like I'm doing a bunch of Crusader Kings 2, then perfect world, I might be able to get, like, say, 3 parts of Crusader Kings 2 done in a bundle. But even then, that often turns into 2 just because they're so flipping long. Anyway, that often takes me into, like, early evening. Like, we're approaching 8 PM by the time I'm done with recording those and editing one of them. So at that point, potentially it's time to put out a video, if there's 2 videos that day. And then it's time for some dinner, and then at the bare minimum, at 10 PM UK time, there will always be a video to put out. And then for the most part, whatever I'm doing, I'll just keep half an hour on that and make sure the channel is ticking along nicely at its busiest time of the day. And then, you know, that will probably go on till, like, I don't know, 1 AM, 2 AM or something. Then I'll go to bed and the cycle shall repeat. Would you say the overall reaction to Crusader Kings 2 has been positive? Hugely. Hugely positive. Like, I was hoping it might do well, but it's done better than I really thought it could. So it's been spectacularly good. So absolutely, it's sticking around. It's going to be a long series, and who knows, in future it might return. But by the sounds of it, given the length of Paradox games and how new stuff is also coming in for Stellaris and rumours of Crusader Kings 3, I don't know like how many Crusader Kings 2 runs they're going to be that are separate from each other, because yeah, we might kind of have this, then Europa Universalis, then it might be time for Crusader Kings 3, and like there'll be Stellaris in there somewhere as well. So yeah, I don't know, but you know, I'm going to try and show off everything Crusader Kings 2 has to offer as best I can. So you know, as time goes by, I'm sure we shall have good kings and bad kings, and moments of greatness and moments of madness. So hopefully we'll get to show the full range of the game across the dynasty. Any more recommendations for YouTubers to watch? Up Is Not Jump was the last one I recall. That went very, very well indeed. That bastard actually overtook us in sub count just the other night. Dear oh flipping dear. They grow up so fast. I actually haven't found like a brand new YouTuber I really like recently. Like, the 2 that are growing fast that I'm really enjoying right now are Up Is Not Jump and Jenny E. Nicholson, who are both doing some really fun, cool stuff right now. But I have mentioned both of them before, so I'm afraid I cannot give you one because I literally, I just haven't found a new YouTuber that I'm like super fond of that's like brand new to actually recommend over the last month. So I am sorry, I do not have anything other than that which I've already said. Any chance you'd consider Forsaken Remaster, which has just been done by Night Dive, who did such a good job with Turok 1 and 2? Yes, I'm very familiar with Night Dive. I love what they do, salvaging old games and bringing them up to the modern world. Yeah, absolutely. I will see if I can get hold of review code for Forsaken Remastered. And though I had an N64, I never had Forsaken. Never had Forsaken, because I heard it was an absolute flipping nightmare to control with, yeah, the limitations of the N64 controller. So I'm hoping with modern controllers it will be more manageable. Hi John, Claire and Tabby, just let you know you make the comfiest videos on YouTube. Oh, that's really sweet. Thank you, I like that. That's a really nice compliment. I approve of that exact phrasing. Also, as a proud frog eater, I've got to ask, if you've ever visited France, what is your favourite and least favourite place there? Ooh, I'm not sure I really can answer that because I've not really spent much time at all in France, really. I've been to Lyon, which is where Claire's from, and that's absolutely lovely. So I guess I'll say Lyon for my favourite, but I think I'm going to have to hand over to Editing Claire, as she can give you potentially a much better and in-depth answer about that.
Oh, that's really hard, especially since John already said Lyon, which, you know, is my hometown and one of my favorite places. And since I've also been to Lyon recently and been reminded just how much I love it, it's quite difficult to think of any other place. I don't think that there's necessarily a place that I dislike in France, so that is my least favorite. That would have to be like really circumstantial and based on like what was going on in my life when I visited.
John, what's the deal with Belgium? I have a feeling you have much love for that little country. I do, and I'm not even sure why. Sometimes I just kind of, you know, I just pick things and I like them. Belgium I do like as a country. Belgium is a good, fun little country. Maybe it's just because, like, you know, despite being like a really tiny country, it played such a major role in 2 world wars, and this little country was quite a plucky little combatant in such, you know, major conflicts. Or maybe it's just because it's like such a small country that has such a major role in European and international politics, just because of the various institutions dotted around that sort of an area. I don't know. I just like the country. You should definitely check out Heavy Rain, currently free with PS Plus. Ooh, okay. I was going to keep this one a bit of a secret till it came out. Yes, as it's free with PS Plus, I was indeed going to give Heavy Rain a look. Video coming pretty soon, but don't tell anyone, that's a secret between me and you. If you were at a convention and you saw someone wearing a Many a True Nerd shirt or pin, would you introduce yourself to them? Oh, 100%. Absolutely flipping 100%. I don't think it's ever actually happened, if I recall correctly. So things have happened, like someone's overheard me talking to a dev and they recognise my voice and some things like that. But I don't think I've ever actually seen Many a True Nerd merch out in the wild. But if I ever did, yeah, 100% I'd go up and say hello. Is there any chance you'd play Astroneer or Subnautica? Well, I've already played Astroneer a couple of times. In fact, the stream that I believe was actually on Dan's side of Astroneer, where I did the stream with Dan and Matt for Astroneer. That's actually, I think, one of the best things we ever did together. The Astroneer stream we did was absolutely flipping fantastic. I love that video so much. It's just wonderful. But you're right, it's been a while since I've played it, and I did absolutely love it. And honestly, I think Astroneer, as it was like when it first emerged, like whatever it was, 18 months ago, I already, like, I enjoy it more than I enjoy No Man's Sky Next now. Like, No Man's Sky Next is so much better. It's decent now. I still think Astroneer, as it was when it first emerged, was better. So I'm kind of curious what state Astroneer is in right now. So I should probably go and have a little look at that. As for Subnautica, that's certainly shown up a lot more in the requests recently. So that's making its way up the list. Don't be surprised if you see that at some point soonish. John, do you have any plans to start up any more live stream series? If so, which games? Not just yet, because Claire's about to go on a bit of a holiday to go and kind of do some conventions around the world. So I'm not going to start one while she's going to be away. But when she gets back in late August, I'm thinking probably yes. I have an idea in mind. I don't want to say what it is in case it doesn't come to fruition, because I think you get pretty excited if I mentioned it, and then you'd be disappointed if it never appeared. But potentially yes. But spoilers, sweetie, I'm not saying just what quite yet. Definitely normal Ribena, light Ribena is terrible. Boo! Boo! How long should a teabag rest in state by the side of the sink after making a cup of tea? Quite a long time, though it depends on your recycling rules. Like, you know, for ours, it's purely long enough that it dries out so it can go inside the special bin. Because we've got a special bin that you put, like, dried tea bags into. But you're not supposed to put wet stuff in there. So it has to sit by the sink long enough to have dried out before it migrates to that bin. That's probably the answer, but it kind of depends on your local recycling laws. Congrats on the success of Fallout 3 is better than you think. Any other plans for long form videos? Well, I do already have the notes for Fallout 4 is better than you think, which is... oh dear. Yeah, that one's going to appear probably before the end of the year. That's going to be fun, because I think people who don't like Fallout 3 like Fallout 4 even less, so... That's gonna be good right there. Also, what impact did that video have on the channel in terms of views by non-subs and new subs for the channel? Interesting. So, you can definitely see an uptick in views overall, and I've literally just cut that in my analytics. So yeah, you can see a pretty major uptick in, just in the non-subscribed views. Let's just actually shift that over to rolling 7-day average so I can kind of see the pattern a bit more clearly. Yeah, it kind of shot up as the video kind of got shared around a little bit. Now it's settled down at about... Yeah, right now it's currently about 50% kind of less than the historic average. Let's just quickly expand out this time frame a little bit. Yeah, actually. So, actually not so much. It was a bit of a historic low over there. Fine. So it looks like actually, now that we've kind of settled in, it's about like 3 months-ish later after that video launched, and like the initial wave of interest has kind of subsided, actually, we're still holding at somewhere in the range of what looks like maybe 10 to 15% higher non-subscribed views than I would typically expect, which is mainly down to that video just kind of being the top ranking video on Fallout 3 on YouTube. So yeah, it has had an ongoing impact. Of course, those non-subscribed views do often convert into subscribers. So yeah, absolutely, it's been a great little driver for loads of new subscribers coming in. And as we're now over the half-year mark, how's the first half of the year been for the channel versus expectation? Well, it's kind of hard to say, because you redraw your expectations all the time. Like, you know, I had no idea at the beginning of the year there was going to be anything as successful as Fallout 3 as Bet You Think on the channel at all. So, you know, we're going to, well, short of some disaster, we're going to fairly easily hit 400,000 this year in the not too distant future. So that's great. That's really, really cool indeed. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd have loved to have hit 500,000 this year, but that was always a bit of an ask, and I never really had like a strategy to achieve it. It just would have been a nice to have. So I will be more than happy that we're like, you know, a little bit over halfway through the year right now, and we're already at like, you know, looking very comfortably around 375,000 and heading at a nice decent pace towards 400. I'm more than happy with that. Do you plan on playing Evolution? I think it would be absolutely hilarious. You're going to have to be a bit more specific there. I hadn't heard of the game. I just searched for Evolution on Steam. I found a game from 2016, but it's a very tiny game. It's only got 41 reviews and it's mixed. So I'm not sure if that's the game you actually meant. So provide me with a little bit more detail, and I shall get back to you on that one, because I'm not sure if that's actually the one you mean. You wake up one morning and find the Doctor has left you the key to the TARDIS. It's programmed so you can make one trip to any point in time and space, then return home after 24 hours. Where would you go and why? I've answered similar questions to this before, and I'm afraid I have to be boring enough to stick with my answer because it's actually, you know, true. Which is, I would probably go to Athens to go and see the performance of Aristophanes' frogs at the Dionysia, because I genuinely just want to see how the damn thing was staged. I have no idea how they staged it. We just don't really know. We've got some good estimates, but it's an amazing, wonderful, such a significant play in the historical context it was written in, a hilarious play. But I would love to see how it was staged and how Greek theatre was staged in general, because sometimes we just don't know. So I'm going to stick with my traditional answer there, because I would love to know that. It would be amazing. John, imagine you've just beat the devil in a fiddle contest, and now he will either give you one object that currently exists or has ever existed, or alternatively answer one question truthfully without any trickery. What do you ask for, or what question do you ask? Well, I can't think of anything I'd probably want more than requesting his fiddle. The fiddle that he used in the fiddle contest. Because imagine the bragging rights. If you just, like, you know, you could basically just say, John, did you have a fiddle contest? Yeah, here's the fiddle. I got the devil's fiddle. You can't challenge him to a fiddle contest anymore. I've got his flipping fiddle. That's the sort of bragging rights you just, you know, money can't buy that. Money can't buy that. I want to beat the devil in a fiddle contest and then take his fiddle with me after I'm done, because screw you, Satan. John, I asked for job interview advice last month and I got the job. Oh, congratulations. How do you like to relax or unwind after a long day of work? Mostly I just read. I just read. In fact, actually, thank you. I can't remember whether it was last month or the month before. Someone recommended the book Station 11. I got that, and I have read it in full. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. I will be reading more of her work. So, thank you to whoever that was. Big dogs or small dogs? Big dogs. Every flipping time, and Claire's with me on this one. I definitely, yeah. Next time we move, I want to have at least a little bit of a garden so we can have a dog. And a big dog. I really want a dog. It's been so long since I've had a dog on my own. I really want a dog, damn it. And definitely a proper big dog. Like, a medium dog is fine, just not too small. How do you figure out the popularity of just released games, given that many people may be putting off watching until they've played for themselves? It's a good question. Sometimes it's quite hard to figure out. Like, what it looks like to me is, like, that seems to always be a minority of views. Like, whenever we actually, like, do a brand new AAA release that's got some, like, say, heavy story elements in it, you think, okay, some people are not going to be watching because they're going to be wanting to play for themselves. But, like, when you go back and check on those videos later, sure, they might have picked up, like, a small number more views than you might expect them to do over time naturally. But the change seems to be fairly modest. So for the most part, if you're just basically using an initial read on a video to figure out whether it's popular or not, that's normally enough, to be honest. Because, yeah, the people who just chose not to watch it because they wanted to play it for themselves first, that tends to be a pretty small number. So it doesn't really affect my understanding of how I look at and analyse the success of a video. What's the chance of getting some more deep games that make you and us think? Ooh, interesting. Well, it kind of depends, really, because sometimes those games are hard to figure out. Like, sometimes you'll find a narrative game that positions itself as, like, super deep and thinky and philosophical, and actually it's, you know, it's actually very simple, and it's very blunt in its metaphors. It's not really that interesting at all. And sometimes you find puzzle games, look like they've got a lot of depth to them, but actually once you've learned the basics, there's not a huge amount there. It's very hard to predict ahead of time when a game is going to be really deep and really interesting and really thinky. Like, they could really creep up on you, and it's very hard to figure out which one's which. So, absolutely, I'd love more of them. It's just sometimes hard to spot them. Also, this will be put up in August, so can I get a happy birthday? My birthday's the 23rd. Happy birthday, Rose! A happy birthday for the 23rd. Nukes in Fallout 76. On face value, without playing it, yay or nay? I think yay. I think they've been completely misunderstood. I think I've discussed this, like, previously, so I'll keep this one brief. Like, loads of people saying, oh, they're just going to be used for griefing. I really don't think they are, because basically firing a nuke at, like, you know, other players, rival players or players you're not playing with, would be the stupidest thing you could do, because nukes aren't really weapons of mass destruction. Bear in mind this is the Fallout universe. Nukes just contain magic fairy dust that, you know, convert animals into more awesome versions of themselves. Like, you're going to fire a nuke in order to create an area that's full of rare enemies and rare resources and diddly-diddly-dee. Like, the thing you absolutely don't want to do is just fire a nuke at the other side of the map at someone else, because then they're going to get to it before you. They're going to get warning the nuke's incoming, they're going to run out of the way, and then they're just going to run in and grab all the cool loot before you can get there. Like, you'd basically be, you'd be helping them. Like, it would be a form of griefing in which the person you're trying to grieve, you'd actually actively help them and not hinder them in any meaningful way. So, I think the nukes are going to work just fine, because it's pretty clear to me that they are there to create new, interesting, high-level areas, not to actually cause damage to other players' encampments. That's just like a little side effect. What's a weird habit that you have? Ooh! I've got a good one. I like having the subtitles on, like, all the time. I don't do it quite so much anymore, but when I was younger, like, under all circumstances, even if it was a quiet room and I could perfectly clearly hear what was going on and, you know, there was no one with any strange accents or anything, it was all perfectly clearly pronounced English, I would always have the subtitles on. I just always have them on. And I sometimes still do. To this day, I just have subtitles on TV. And I don't need them. For any reason, I just like having them there. So, yeah, I don't know when or why I started doing that. How do you choose what game would potentially be good as a live stream? Especially since some of the games you've chosen I normally wouldn't have thought as being live stream material. It's a very interesting one because, like, there's a lot of different things that you kind of need to figure out there. Like, I tend to go for slightly slower paced games where you can stop and have a think. So turn-based combat of XCOM works really nicely. For example, the turn-based campaign mixed with real-time battles of Total War works very nicely. It's games with a bit of downtime where you can kind of, you can spend time just building something or looking over something or time between turns, so there's a bit of downtime to to interact with the chat and let Claire catch up with the super chats, but there's also moments of high intensity, which is why I think Rome Total War, that works really nicely, the Solaire said live streams, because you got those quiet moments on the map where you're just discussing things and you're just enjoying the role playing and it's pretty chill. Then you have the battles and then there's moments of real high intensity, and I think that's why I also say the XCOM Nightmare Insanity stream worked really nicely, because you had lots of quiet moments, because you've got time just kind of planning and trying to figure out what you're going to do. Then you've got the battles themselves that are very intense, even though you can just make them slow down as well. I think like turn-based games are really appropriate, and like puzzle and strategy things, they work really nicely. Some have worked better than others, absolutely, but I'd say kind of a good blend of game pace is the crucial thing I look for. It's games that have moments of relative, calm, quiet, as well as some levels of interesting high intensity to them. That, I think, is what works the best. How are you enjoying your taste of Australian weather, John? Not much. Not much at all. It's too bloody warm. Do you think the size of a game's UI affects views? I've been watching the Crusader Kings series on PC, as it isn't always great on a tablet's small screen, and it just crossed my mind. It could make a difference. Certainly, like, when I accidentally began a new Stellaris series, and I accidentally set it to 1440, then rendered it in 1080p, so like all of the bars were way too small to actually read. I just had to restart it properly, because like that did make a difference and loads of people commented on it. Crusader Kings 2, I think people were pretty cool with it. Like, no one really mentioned it, because there's not much you can do. Like, I have installed a couple of mods to help with readability, and the tooltips are, yeah, much larger in font, so it's definitely a lot better than it was in that regard. But there simply isn't a good kind of solid, straight up total UI refresh for Crusader Kings 2 that improves everything and makes everything a lot bigger and more readable. Possibly just because there's too many elements on screen, you couldn't fit all of it on. So people have been very understanding, and I have introduced a couple of mods to help with that in terms of making a more readable, less kind of like deliberately archaic fancy font and increasing the size of the tooltips. And a suggestion for Factorio and Infinifactory. Yes, indeed, I do have both of those kind of on my radar. Infinifactory especially, made by the same guy as made Opus Magnum. He's made something else as well recently. Claire was just showing me that this morning, so keep an eye out for more from that chappie as well. John, have you ever played any of the Infamous games before? If so, thoughts? I am very much aware of them. I never actually played them myself, but I do actually happen to own them. So watch this space. They might show up sooner rather than later. I don't want to say any more than that. And any chance of playing any of the MDicky games such as Hard Times? They're really janky, weird indie games made within a custom-built wrestling engine. Ooh, that sounds very odd. No promises, but I'll give them a look. Last question, if you and Claire took part in Damble's massive Fortnite collab, what sick bars would you both drop? Oh, I think there's a reason you didn't invite me. I'm nowhere near cool enough to, rap or even attempt to rap, so probably it's just best we never find out the answer to that. John, what game should I play next? Looking for something around 20 bucks that's available on Steam. Oh, blimey. Probably the best value you can get for about that price point on Steam right now that I really like is just dive into historical Total War. Honestly, there's not really a bad one. Some people don't like Empire. I personally am not desperately keen on Napoleon, but there's, basically you'll be able to pick up any of the older ones for that money these days, and you'll get a lot of good solid hours out of them. So just go and enjoy some of that old franchise. John, I was wondering what your lasting impressions of Hello Games is now. Do you still view them in a negative light due to the overpromise and disaster at launch of No Man's Sky? No, I kind of view them in two separate ways, which is I think Sean Murray deserves to continue to take flack for the fact that, you know, he didn't just overpromise. He was given many opportunities in many prominent interviews to set the record straight, and he actively chose to double down on things that were, as it turned out, you know, straight up lies. You know, he was asked about multiplayer and he said, yes, there is multiplayer in the launch version. He was asked what happens if two players find each other, and he did say that's the only way you can figure out what each other looks like if you actually come across each other, but the chance of happening is infinitesimally small. And then, you know, within, what was it, like 3 days of launch, players did start finding each other and verified that even though they were standing on the same spot of the same planet, they weren't actually there. He had plenty of opportunities to dial down the hype to reasonable levels. He had plenty of opportunities. He chose to double down on that, on things that he at that point must have known were not realistically deliverable. So for that, he still deserves, I think, to be viewed in a negative light. However, his team and his studio and, you know, whoever it was that decided to make those sorts of high-level direction decisions, which again might be him, but we can't know exactly who makes all of the big calls at any major studio at all. They did take a game that, you know, had sold a lot of copies and was, you know, basically the punchline for every joke on the internet, and they did sit down and quietly improve it. They didn't take the money and run. They didn't try and flog DLC to the fan base that did stick around and just decided to just kind of, you know, try and milk them and take them for everything they got. They provided a bunch of free updates and they've slowly won goodwill back. And they, as a team overall, deserve a lot of credit for that. John, have you ever done a no-guns run of Fallout New Vegas? Not as a specific rule set, but back when I did kill everything in New Vegas, I did focus quite a lot on melee weapons during that. And absolutely, melee and unarmed in New Vegas is, I think, some of my favourite. I think, along with Fallout 4, it's very, very good at dealing with it. Fallout 3, I think, it just doesn't really work as a melee and unarmed game, if only because the way damage is calculated, it really screws you over if they've got guns and you don't. But yeah, particularly in New Vegas and Fallout 4, I think both of them are really fun for unarmed and melee weapons. So I have experimented with it, but I've never done it as, like, you know, a pure this and only this challenge run. If you could add any Fallout 4 feature to New Vegas, which would it be? Oh, just the junk and crafting system, which is just, you know, it's a brilliant addition. Brilliant, brilliant addition, and I really hope it stays in, you know, Fallout 5 when we get the actual full, proper next entry into the franchise. Did you or Claire read the Witcher books? I didn't. I think Claire's aware of them, but I'm not sure if she's actually ever read them. I'm not sure. Editing Claire, remind me, what's your relationship with those books?
I've actually read only one Witcher book. I've read the first novel in the series, although I'm aware that there are some short stories that came before that. And honestly, it wasn't really for me. I didn't really get along with, like, the structure of the novel. I thought it was a little bit all over the place, and there was some things in the relationships as depicted in the books that really squeaked me out. I don't know if it's really different in the game, but in the book I really couldn't get along with the way that they described some of the relationships at all.
In a previous Patroncast, you mentioned that you want to have a dog in the future. How would you name your dog? I'm not sure if I'm ever going to actually, you know, manage to pull this off. I'd like to name the dog Ajax or Ias, depending on whether you want to go for the Latinized version or the Anglicized version of the name. But Ajax, the Greek hero, because of course there were two heroes called Ajax who went to the Trojan War. There was Ajax, the son of Telamon, who was like the great Ajax, the Ajax who people generally think about, who was actually the guy who's in, you know, Sophocles' play Ajax. And then there's the lesser Ajax, who was the son of Oileus. So I'd like to have a dog called Ajax, so that you could basically do good dog and bad dog, but like that. So when he's a good boy, you got to be say, oh, who's a good boy? Who's a Telamonian Ajax? And then, like, you know, if he like urinates on the rug, say, bad Ajax, Ajax, son of Oileus. Sorry, that possibly is the geekiest thing I've ever said, but I'd quite like to name a dog Ajax just so I can do that. And how does the MATN team, including Tabby, survive the flipping hot summer? Fans, drinking lots of water, hiding in shadowy nooks. Pretty much, yes. I'm planning on getting into modding in the near future, probably starting with Fallout 4. I have a list of things I want to do, but wanted to know if you had any ideas of your own that you wanted to see. Can't promise anything. More curious, looking for launching off points. Honestly, I'm not really the right person to ask about this, because I kind of go pretty much to two extremes, which is either I like my mods to be so, like, subtle, you wouldn't even know they were there. They're just small, tiny quality of life improvements, or texture improvements, or shadow improvements, or whatever. Or, alternatively, I go completely 100% the other way, and it needs to be an absolute total conversion mod that changes literally everything. Like, you know, all the details, the entire genre of the game, the ethos and the tone of the game get completely flipped around, like what happens with Frost, and with Dust, and with Autumn Leaves. So I don't go in the middle, so I'm really not the right person to actually ask about that, to be honest, because yeah, I either like my mods to be barely noticeable, or literally everything has changed. So, you know what, dive in, have fun, keep me updated how you're getting on. One question about editing, someone who wants to know who's actually editing Crusader Kings 2 and who's actually editing the Road Trip collaboration. Crusader Kings 2 is entirely edited by Claire, that's all her work. And for the Road Trip, the episodes on our end are actually edited by me. In fact, I'm going to show you something right now. What you're seeing on screen right now is what it looks like to edit together a Road Trip episode. Because there are three people's perspectives, everyone's got their own view, and of course their own voice audio, and their own game audio. But of course, everyone was potentially recording with slightly different audio levels, like, you know, their microphone might have been set slightly differently, and their game audio might have been set to different levels, so that all has to be changed separately as well. And then you've got the problem of one person can be on screen at any one time, but you want to only hear their game audio, because you don't want to hear what's going on in someone else's audio. So what you've got to do is you've got to pick the person you want to be on screen at any given moment, drag that video track up to the top, and then also, once you've made the cut there, drag their and only their game audio up to the top, because all the game audio tracks are set to be muted until the audio is dragged up to the top, where each audio track, and obviously me, Dan and Matt also need our own audio tracks at the top, because each of our games were at slightly different volumes, and we've got to standardize the volume between the three. Basically, what you're seeing there is an editing nightmare. It's why multiple POV videos are insanity. They take so long to put together. So flipping long. But yeah, the ones on Dan's channel, I'm pretty sure were edited entirely by... I think they were entirely edited by Matt, but don't quote me on that because I don't actually know for certain. I think Matt did them. And the ones on my channel were all done by me. A suggestion for X3 Albion Prelude. Now, I have heard about the X games before. I have heard about these. These are, yes, space sims with very detailed working economies. I have meant to give them a look in the past, so no plans for it to be imminent, but keep your eyes open, it might well happen at some point. And are you planning a longer RPG series in the future? Yes. Yes, I am. Because there is actually something that is starting in the not too distant future. I'm not sure if it's before the end of August. It might be starting in September, and it might get pushed back depending on various factors. But something very big is coming. Something very, very big is starting in the not too distant future. So I can't spoil that one. Sorry, that one's too big a deal, but you're gonna love it. How much time on an average week do you get to enjoy leisure gaming as opposed to work that we end up seeing? Very little, to be honest. Very, very little indeed. Like, sometimes I'll just kind of play an hour or two of Overwatch in the evening. But that's not the most common thing in the world. Occasionally I might just play a little bit of, like, say, you know, Advance Wars. Or I might even, like, play a little bit of one of the older Pokemon games if I happen to be in the mood for it. But, like, you're talking maybe 5 hours a week, absolute tops. I do not do a huge amount of just straight up leisure gaming. But that doesn't mean... That's not really phrased correctly, because I get a lot of joy out of playing the stuff that I'm actually recording. But insofar as, like, you know, stuff I just quietly play for myself, there's not that much time for that sort of thing, you're right. Now that we know that the Fallout 76 beta doesn't start until October, how has that affected planning? Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll admit I'm a tiny bit concerned it's that late, because, like, you know, if there's lots of feedback from the community from that beta, they're not going to have much time to implement it, are they? I was really thinking it would be, like, August-ish. Because then, if we all had feedback, there'd be time to actually integrate that feedback into the game. And sure, it's an online game, so they can continually patch and modify it over time, but I'm a tiny bit more worried than I was. Because I figured that they would actually do the beta sufficiently far ahead of launch that they would have time to integrate feedback into the game and modify it based on the experience of the beta. And as it is now, there's going to be almost no time to do that. So we'll have to keep an eye on that sort of thing. As for what platform I'll play on, almost certainly PC. I can't see it being anything other than PC. It's possible to say that, like, you know, the first part might be on a different thing. If I just happen to be able to get it on Xbox, like, a week earlier, then I'd do the first part on Xbox. But, like, if I did a proper full, like, big series on it, 100% it would be on PC. John, I was just wondering about your thoughts on fan engagement versus views. This person basically looking at the Dust series versus the Crusader Kings 2 series, where Dust looks like it's going to get slightly more views, but Crusader Kings 2 is potentially going to get more in the way of comments, for example. Well, probably, once you actually age them out to the same level. In short, it's very important. Fan engagement is like one of the key. This is something that YouTube calls social signals, which basically is YouTube's way of saying, has a video been interacted with? Does it have likes? Does it have comments? Are the comments themselves generating replies and discussion? Are lots of comments getting upvotes on them? Is the actual YouTuber down in the comments interacting? Is he favoriting certain comments, etc, etc, etc? Like, those sorts of social signals are things that YouTube seems to love. And I think that's why, even though, you know, our Crusader Kings 2 video, the first part of it, doesn't have, like, all the views in the world, it still went straight to the top of YouTube's rankings for Crusader Kings 2. And I think that's why Fallout 3 is better than you think is clinging stubbornly to the top of Fallout 3, even though that's a really, really competitive space, and there are plenty more viewed videos about Fallout 3 out there. And the reason is, like, that has generated a stupid amount of comments. Like, here we go, Fallout 3 is better than you think has, of 2 million views, it's got almost 20,000 comments, 46,000 thumbs up, and 6,000 thumbs down. Like, that's crazy. Just to, like, give you a sense here. So, the next most watched video on the channel is Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything, Part 1. Now, that's got 1.6 million views. So, that's about 80% of the views of Fallout 3's Better Than You Think. It has about 2,000 comments versus 20,000 comments on Fallout 3's Better Than You Think. Alright, and Fallout 3 Kill Everything Part 1 has about 1,700. Fallout 4 Survival Mode, the first part of that, which is at 1.1 million views, that's got 3,000 comments. Alright, Fallout New Vegas Don't Starve at 845,000 views has 1,300 comments. The character build guide I made for Fallout 4 has like 2,200 comments off 800,000 views. Like, it's just worlds apart. Like, the number of comments on Fallout 3's Better Than You Think is so damn high. Like, 20,000 comments of 2 million views is, it's a lot. That is an awful flipping lot of comments. And it's because it's a controversial topic that people are passionate about in both directions. And because it's got all those comments, YouTube is just like, oh my goodness, people are interacting with this like crazy. There's so many comments and so many likes and everything. We better put this straight to the top. So that's worked out pretty nicely for me. So yeah, absolutely. Social signals are hugely important because they seem to be, as best we can tell, the way that YouTube decides what actually gets tons of views and what gets to go in suggested videos and top of the rankings and all of that business. John, you previously mentioned you wanted to change the channel to include more one-offs rather than traditional Let's Play series. What's been the effect so far, if any? Pretty good, I think. I think it's worked well. I think if you look over the last month, there's been... we've run less series, and we've had instead more like, you know, a one-off on Monday and a one-off on Tuesday and a one-off on Wednesday, and then say The Crew 2 and Crusader Kings on Thursday and a one-off on Friday and a one-off on Saturday, together with a live stream, and then Crusader Kings and a Fallout series on Sunday. And people have been responding well, the views are high, engagement's really high. I've been feeling good about it. I've been feeling really good about it. I do want to add at least one more series in. I think just one more. But I'm not sure exactly how I wanna run it. But it's still in flux. It's still in flux. But I think it's been working really nice. I think people have been responding to it really well. John, have you ever played any of the Shadowrun games? I have not actually. So post-apocalyptic cyberpunk with magic, elves, dragons, etc. Newer games are turn-based tactical RPGs. Alright, you sold me, I'll give him a look-see. John, what are your favourite and least favourite episodes of Rick and Morty? Okay, I had to actually have a long think about this. So, probably my least favourite is Raising Gazorpazorp. And though it's got like the really fun setup with the robot and whatever, I think it's probably my least favourite just because the actual section where they're on Gazorpazorp doesn't really go anywhere. It's a fairly weak section. Like, I don't really remember any particularly good jokes or sections actually on Gazorpazorp. It has a good, strong, like, opening with the setup, and once they're back on Earth and dealing with the Gazorpazorpian once he's grown up, that's kind of fun, but I just find the actual middle bit with Rick and Summer on Gazorpazorp just a strangely flat, uninteresting bit of it. So that's probably my least favourite episode. My favourite has to be Total Recall, the one with the alien parasites that get into your memories and add more memories. That's just beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. Probably, like, the reason it's my favourite as well is it doesn't have a B-plot. Loads of Rick and Morty episodes have the main plot, but they also have a B-plot, where the A-plot is someone's going off having adventures, but there's a B-plot back at home with the characters that aren't on the adventures. And very often the B-plot is a little bit on the weak side, to be honest. Actually, in some cases, the B-plot's the best bit. Like, in The Ricks Must Be Crazy, where they go inside the car battery. I think the B-plot's actually the strongest one there, because the A-plot is where they're going into the battery, and they're going deeper and deeper into battery universes, which is a fun joke, but I think it kind of goes on a bit too long. But the B-plot is Keep Summer Safe, which is, like, one of my favourite sequences in the whole of Rick and Morty. So that's actually a weird one, because actually the B-plot's what salvages that episode for me, and why I think it's actually a really good episode, regardless. But Total Recall doesn't actually have a B-plot. The whole thing is just set in the house, just purely around these alien parasites that get in your memories and whatever. And it's a beautiful, beautiful episode. It just throws so many new characters, and all the new characters are wonderful. It's a great episode. I absolutely love Total Recall. Have you considered four-man co-op of the new No Man's Sky next? Well, Dan did mention it on Twitter. I'm not sure whether he was joking or not, but potentially if we chose to ditch Matt on a completely desolate planet on the far side of the universe and then just ran away to a new galaxy, yeah, that might be fun. That might be fun indeed. We'll have to see whether that actually happens. I have no idea if Dan was just joking. I suspect he was. If you had to combine two game franchises together, which are completely different, to make one super game, what franchises would you combine? Ooh, I'm going to pick up my stupid Hitman Disneyland idea. Let's just actually merge together Hitman and Planet Coaster. Yeah, that's how we make that a reality. Marvellous. Good day, John. Any thoughts or experience dealing with anxiety? Not so much these days. Not so much these days at all, to be honest. But back when I was a student over a decade ago, yeah, I probably suffered from quite bad anxiety. I wouldn't have said it at the time because I just basically tried to ignore it and work around it and never sought any form of help or diagnosis or whatever. Don't do what I do, kids. All right, this is what not to do. This is what not to do. But yeah, I just tried to ignore it and work around it and all of that business, which was definitely not the right thing to do in the slightest. But I think that's also partly just like, I look back now and I was very uncomfortable in my own skin when I was younger. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin. I didn't really know who I was. I didn't know who I wanted to be, and it took me a long time. Like in my early to mid 20s, I think I figured myself out a lot better, and I started being a lot more comfortable in my own skin. I started being a lot more comfortable with who I am, and once I was happy with that, once I was happy with me, then I was a lot less anxious about anything, and like a lot of things that used to make me very anxious. Some things still do. Like, as I mentioned earlier, like, I'm quite claustrophobic, so I don't like being in confined spaces. I wasn't really desperately keen on, like, planes or trains or buses or anything where you were kind of closed in. Cars I was okay with, because, like, if you were driving anyway, because if you were driving a car, then you know at any point you want to, you can stop and you can get out. So that's fine. But, like, if you're on transport something else is driving that's got a schedule, you can't. So then you're actually a bit more trapped. So not so much anymore, but absolutely I used to, and it's something that I didn't ever seek help with. I should have done. but it's also something that for me just got better once I was happy with myself. So yeah, take that as a kind of a positive, it gets better message. But like, you know, if you suffer from anxiety yourself, do actually speak to someone about it, because I didn't, and it probably could have got over it a lot faster if I did. Based on the most recent information about Fallout 76, what has that done to the timetable for Fallout 4 You Only Live Once? Well, definitely I'm not going to try and squeeze it in before 76. I think it's, like, it has a good chance of being, after 76, it'll either be Fallout 2 or it'll be Fallout 4 You Only Live Once, depending on which I decide to do first, I would imagine. One of those two anyway. Have you heard of a game called Arca's Path? VR puzzle game where you control the movement of a sphere by looking at where you want it to go. According to PlayStation Access, it's a fairly chill game. I think will be right up your alley. VR games, for the most part, I only cover if they're something really special. Because lots of people don't like watching videos of VR because some people get headaches, some people just aren't interested because they don't have VR hardware themselves, so for them it will be pointless to watch because they couldn't buy it even if they liked the look of it. And as for PlayStation Access, yeah, if it's a PSVR game, I don't actually have the PSVR. I've only got the Oculus and the Vive. So if that's a PSVR game, I couldn't play it regardless. So I will give it a look-see to see if it is actually available on my system, but I wouldn't hold your breath. Though it sounds like a nice, fun, chill thing, and I might check it out on my own if I happen to have the Vive out, it doesn't sound like one I would make a video of, for the most part. What do you think of the top 5 Excel functions or formulas everyone should know? Oh, bloody hell. I can't rank them. Look, you've already got the Excel video, alright? It's all about pivot tables, alright? Just VLOOKUPs, HLOOKUPs, pivot tables. As long as you've got pivot tables and charts reading off pivot tables, you're fine, alright? It's just, everyone should know about pivot tables. Everyone in the world should be sat down and educated about the importance of pivot tables. Would you ever consider doing a Rome restoration playthrough of Crusader Kings 2? Absolutely no objection to that whatsoever, but, you know, I'd need to finish my current playthrough and play a bunch of other Paradox Grand strategy games. So while I've got no conceptual issue with that, it would be 10 bajillion years off, because there's so much else that I want to do in Paradox, and new stuff is coming out of Paradox all the flipping time. So, you know, don't hold your breath. How long have you had your eye on Fallout Miami? I watched the trailer, it looked pretty good. So when that rocks up, I might well give it a look-see. Don't know if it'll be a full series, but I'll give that a look-see, absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to change on the channel if you had the option to? I know, well, actually, I do have the option to. I know this is a really, really minor, petty thing. I just need to sit down and make some more flipping end cards, because the new style end cards, I don't have anywhere near enough of them, so they get repeated a lot. I want to make, like, 30 or 40 more. Like, one day, while Claire's on holiday, I'm just going to do nothing but that, and there's going to be 10 bajillion new end cards, and it's going to be beautiful. Dear John, why a pink mini? I just wanted something that was really sensible, but I wanted it to be a bit more me, which is why I put the stupid wing on the back that I didn't even know what it did, and then painted it bright pink. So I just wanted it to be a bit me, but also very sensible. So yeah, it's a boring, sensible car with a stupid bit on the back, painted a me colour. That's why I went for the pink Mini. It was literally a last minute decision. Like, I showed up and I didn't know exactly what Dan was going to want to do. So at that point, I knew I needed to just pick a car. So I literally just went through them, and I was looking for, like, you know, cars I've owned. In the past, I was looking for, like, an old Toyota Corolla, because I actually used to have a Toyota Corolla. I really enjoyed that car. It was a brilliant little car, but the Toyotas didn't even seem to be in the game. And then there was, like, this Honda Civic, and I've had a Honda Civic as well. So I thought, okay, that might do. But then I passed by the Mini, I thought, ooh, Mini. Minis are cool. So yeah, I kind of went for that. And what are my thoughts on Crew 2 in general? I think it's fun with friends. I honestly think it's a bit of a lazy game. Like, if you just kind of look around, not a huge amount of care and attention seems to have been put into the world. You come across, like, you know, lampposts that are glitching through things, and trees and bushes that are just floating in the air all over the shop. There's not that much to do and see in the cities. For the most part, the signs just don't work. The game just assumes you're going to have the map on. So, as a result, the signs just basically are garbage and don't work. There's a lot of laziness to it, which I don't like, but it is beautiful, and it's fun to just drive around with some friends. I would really recommend it if you just want to just basically mess around with some friends and drive around together. But, like, as a single-player experience, I'd have been so bored. John, do you think the total cost of older Paradox games makes them prohibitive to newcomers? I'm asking as I saw that Crusader Kings 2 with all DLC comes in at over €200 on Steam. While it's a well-supported game, it is excessive for a game of its age. Absolutely in some ways, but I think there's two things to keep in mind here, which is Crusader Kings 2 without DLC is not an incomplete experience. Crusader Kings 2, just as it is, completely blank, completely vanilla, is a hugely deep game which can give you a ridiculous amount of entertainment and has also received a large amount of free patches and improvements over the years, just as Stellaris, another Paradox game, has continued to receive huge amounts of free patches, free updates, etc., over the years since that originally came out. I don't think Crusader Kings 2, you think, okay, I want to get into Crusader Kings 2, but now there's a bunch of DLC, so I need to buy that in DLC. You buy Crusader Kings 2, and by the way, the other kind of thing about it is Paradox does actually do regular, I'd say pretty regular sales, more regular than I see many publishers do, and also they go for pretty deep discounts. Like, they can easily go for even, like, you know, stuff that's been around not that long, down to minus 50%, down to like minus, 75% off. Like, I've seen that sort of thing floating around in the past. I think it's that you get the base game, and if you've enjoyed the base game and you want to add more to it to increase replayability after your first game, at that point you consider the DLC. For example, maybe there's an element to which, like Crusader Kings 2, there's certain quality of life ones. Like, you might just want to introduce Way of Life and say, okay, if I want to start playing Crusader Kings 2, there might be some things I do want to start with just because they improve the overall flow of the game. So you might want to say, okay, Crusader Kings 2, but also Way of Life and Conclave. But other than that, you might be able to say, you know what, let's just try that, and then if I decide I like that, then I can wait for some sales and pick up one or two more DLC packs, see if I like that sort of thing, and just slowly mix in more and more. So I don't think it's the case that you would ever actually, I don't think you'd ever buy them all in one go. And I think the vast majority of people wouldn't buy them at full price anyway. I think you'd buy the base game and then see if you want to expand it later, and there's plenty of opportunities to do that in sales as time goes by. Would you consider playing Hearts of Iron 4? Ooh, lots of Paradox-related questions. Yes, but not till after Europa Universalis 4, so it's a long way off. It is a long way off, I'm afraid. How does Dust compare to Frost? Right now, ooh, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I think in some ways, like, I prefer Frost's openings. In Frost's opening, obviously, you start underground, and you've actually got to get yourself set up to go above ground. So you need to find yourself a gas mask, and you start off the game, there's no guns anywhere, it's all about melee enemies and melee weapons. Like, the first time you find a gun feels like a really, really big deal. Whereas Dust it's less about guns being kind of rare, it's more about guns being disposable. You pick up a gun and you fire it a few times, and then you just think, okay, I don't have the weight capacity for this amount of ammo, so I'm just going to toss it away and, grab something off this guy I've just shot. It's not so much you don't have ammo, and ammo's extremely limited. It's more that each type of ammo, you're never going to be able to stockpile enough of it that you've got, like, a favourite weapon that you'll just stick with all the time. It's more the case that you'll just kind of regularly rotate your inventory. So it's very different. It's very different, but I do actually, in some ways, I like the setup a lot more. Like the fact that it's, set after the game, unless you have to try and figure out, okay, in this particular universe, what was the ending of the game that took place? What decisions did the courier make? What occurred afterwards? And what did all the factions do? Which ones are still alive versus which ones are not? What happened to all these different factions? I think that's really interesting. I think it's really interesting indeed. So in some ways I find Dust more interesting than Frost, though I think Frost is the more polished product. If you could bring 6 Pokemon to a deserted island, which would you bring? Ooh, okay. We've got to come up with something in terms of utility here. So you'd probably want to bring like a member of the Charmander family because, the tail's always on fire. So basically, you've got yourself a source of fire there, and that guy can like basically, boil water for you. In fact, you're going to want a water Pokemon that can produce water, because then the Pokemon can then like make the water for you, and then you can actually boil it to purify it. So let's bring along a Charmander and a Squirtle, because between the two of them we should be able to actually come up with drinkable water. Now, which Pokemon produce? Is it, yeah, Atropius. Atropius has got those, like, yeah, it's got like bananas and fruit that like grow on it. So logically it would be fine to like pick that fruit and eat it. So that's a source of food, just in case I actually need a source of food. So we'll go for those 3 as a starting point. What else can we have here? We're going to need something to draw attention to ourselves. So let's just bring a Pikachu along. Because the electric attacks would presumably, you know, if I saw a ship in the distance, I could just, like, do a massive thunder shock, and that would logically get their attention. Though Charmander could also start a fire. So between those two, you're absolutely 100% fine. A Psychic type, because, yeah, that would be useful for calling for help as well. So let's just bring an Alakazam along, because then I can basically say, Alakazam, just, like, you know, tell Claire I'm on this island, and, you know, you can figure out where you are. Ooh, a flying type. I'll also need a flying type. So, just need something nice and fast. Just give me a Pidgeot, because the Pidgeot can scout nearby islands and just scout around and report back to me and tell me, like, you know, what's going on and point me in the right direction. And also, potentially, go and, like, you know, figure out where we are in the world and go find ships. There you go. There's 6. I think that was a very practical series of decisions there. Have you been looking forward to the new huge Fallout mods, Miami and New California? Yeah. I mean, keeping an eye on both of them. Do expect to see both of them on the channel at some point. Have you ever watched any of the Games Done Quick? Have I ever watched Games Done Quick? I love Games Done Quick. I've been watching that for years. Watching it for years, and I do watch as much of it live as I can. The downside is they do run it, like, distinctly as an American-centric thing. So, like, the big games, the big runs that everyone wants to watch, they will put on at a convenient time for it to be, like, prime time American, late afternoon, got home from work, early evening viewing, which is too late. It's kind of like, you know, midnight, 2 AM in the UK. So I miss some of the best stuff live and have to catch it on the VOD later. But they've got really good at uploading, like, the VODs to YouTube almost immediately while it's still ongoing. So, yeah. Absolutely, I do watch them on a regular basis. Also, the thing I loved this last year, they seem to have moved away from actually just allowing, like, total out-of-bounds glitch runs into wanting to do inbound but still glitchy runs. So, for example, like, I think it was 2 years ago, they did a prey run where the run was, like, I don't know, 15 minutes or something, because you just basically get out of bounds, then you complete the game, and it was really boring. Whereas this year, in the most recent one, I mean, they did a prey inbound, but you're still allowed, like, glitches. So that was a lot more interesting. It was really interesting. I really hope that next year, they basically follow up with that and say, okay, Fallout's back, but it's not out of bounds. Because if you've never seen it, like, Fallout 3, the live stream, is the most boring live stream imaginable. You literally just escape the vault, get yourself out of bounds under the world, and then you just basically run to the end. And that's pretty much it. It's so dull. It's so dull. You would not believe it. New Vegas is not quite so bad. There's not so much out of bounds to it, because pretty much a yes man run, you can just run from point A to point B and just basically run between the different factions and you're done. So there's less kind of straight up glitching to it, but it's still one of the most interesting speedrun in the world. Like, if I was to ever do a speedrun and actually try and do it remotely seriously, I'd probably do New Vegas, if only because it's actually quite a short run, so it would be less frustrating to try and do. Because, like, you know, if you make a mistake, you haven't been doing it that long. You can actually complete New Vegas speedrunning if you go in the yes man route pretty darn quickly. So probably if I ever were to consider doing it, I'd try doing that. John, much interest in Total War 3 Kingdoms yet? Ooh, I think it does look interesting. I like the fact that it's back to being historical Total War, but it's also looking like, well, you can choose to either set it to have heroes or not, or replace the heroes with, like, a hero surrounded by a bunch of bodyguards. 100% I'll be leaving heroes on, because heroes dueling heroes was one of the best bits about Warhammer. So I'm kind of glad that, like, some of the fun bits in Warhammer will be making a reappearance in historical Total War. So, yeah, think it's going to be good. John, what's your earliest memory? Hard one for me to answer, because the problem is, like, you know, just those odd snatches of early memories, I don't know what order they come in. So, it's very hard for me to say, because I don't know which is actually the earliest of the various kind of half-remembered memories I've got. I remember some really early holidays, being, like, taken to France and to Portugal as a really young kid, and, like, the vague look of the houses, but not in any great detail. Not in any great detail at all. So probably it's one of the holidays I went on when I was still an infant, but I can't remember which was which or which would have been earliest. How did Claire become your employee? Oh, not too complicated a one, really, to be honest. I just straight up needed extra capacity to be able to produce as many videos as I wanted to produce. Like, I just needed an extra pair of hands. And when you're a YouTuber, and when, like, you know, there's only one other employee in the business, it's a question of trust. It's a huge question of trust, because if you're going with an outside individual, this is a person who very likely is going to have access to a lot of, like, information about, like, the channel, and they're probably going to have access to the channel. And, you know, they're going to see the uncut rough versions of all the videos, like, before we've, like, neatened them up and made them look nice. Like, if there's ever a joke that just completely doesn't land, I'd say, actually, Claire, just take that last bit out. You know, they'll see all of that, and it's just something where you've got to really, really trust that person a lot. So, as, you know, Claire knew a lot about the editing, and she'd watched the videos, and, you know, obviously, you know, we're close, understandably. It was just the most logical thing in the world. It was just the most logical thing in the world for kind of like Claire to be the #1 candidate there. And also, it's just, there's also just a straight up very boring logistical issue, which is when I record like a session, it can be anything up to 80 gigabytes of footage. Now, how do you get 80 gigabytes from point A to point B? If I would have hired someone who was in a different part of the country, or maybe even in a different country. And it's quite difficult to do, because it's going to take hours to upload to Dropbox, and like maybe a bit less than that, because upload speeds are obviously going to be slower than download speeds, and maybe an hour for them to download it. Like, I'd be constantly throttling my own internet just uploading stuff, and then they'd have to either send me a version back, or they'd have to have full access to the channel to upload it themselves. There's logistical questions. It's just easier if two people who live in the same space are both working on channel. It's just so much easier. Also, do you usually kill Pikmin or leave him alive in Fallout 4? I think I usually... Actually, I can't remember. I think the time I got to him last, I did leave him alive, because he seemed mostly just interested in killing raiders, and I couldn't really question that. I kill a lot of raiders myself, so, you know what? Murder on. Is there any game you've recently played you can see yourself learning the in-depth detail of the game like you know in Fallout 3 and New Vegas? I'm not sure if I'll ever know it that well, but I'm certainly trying to learn more about Crusader Kings 2, so maybe that. And you've mentioned D&D and other pen and paper type games. You should look at a site called roll20.net if you decide to do that sort of thing. I will do so, but bear in mind this is something that's a long way off and still very much in the idea phase. John, would you mind if I made an XCOM voice pack using your videos? Knock yourself out, go right ahead. What is your favourite fruit? Apples! I like apples. Very boring, but I do like apples. Granny Smith's in particular. Do you have a Greek or Roman tradition in mind that we desperately need to bring back? Ooh, yes, fire. Like having just a sacred fire that needs to constantly be kept, like, alight. Like, not because of any particular reason, just because, like, bonfires are fun, right? So what if we just had a bonfire that was just there all year round? A massive, sacred, national flame that we could all just basically go and toast marshmallows over. That sounds fun. That would be a really good thing for the country, I think. We should have that. Have you ever said New Vegas instead of Las Vegas in conversation? Yeah, I've done it inside the crew too on more than one occasion. It happens quite a lot. John, would it be possible to have a live stream on Saturday at 9:30 PM UK time? That would be easy for Australians because they could get up at 6 AM to watch it. I'm afraid that will be very difficult because bear in mind we live stream for like 3 or 4, sometimes more hours. So if we didn't start till 9 or 9:30 PM, then I'd have to be basically live streaming until 1 or 2:30 AM, and we've got neighbours who would not appreciate this. So while we might be able to do it a bit later on some occasions, I don't think it would fly. Plus, of course, remember, we've actually got, like, you know, normal videos to put out at some point. So I like doing the live stream and then being able to introduce the video. So I'm afraid the current slot does kind of work best, I think. I'm so sorry, Australia. What's the weirdest thing you've had to learn for a hobby? Well, once, before I was actually kind of doing YouTube and my main hobby was writing, I was writing a story, I was writing a Christmas story about like various Christmas traditions. So I did a lot of research into all the different iterations of Christmas figures or, you know, characters in various myths and folklores. around the world that show up in Christmas. Of course, you know, we've got Father Christmas is the most famous, but like loads of European countries have loads of really fun, interesting and incredibly monstrous ones. And like, you know, a lot of people know about Krampus, but Iceland has like lots of interesting stuff going on with its Christmas traditions. There's lots of just really fun stuff there. Lots of fun stuff indeed. What are your 5 most favourite Simpsons quotes? No particular order needed. I'm not sure I can give you 5, but basically, like, I think it's entirely, just basically the entire episode of the Halloween special with the presidential race between Bob Dole and Bill Clinton. Oh, that ages that's a long time ago now. But just so much of that is perfect, with "Don't blame me, I voted for Kodos." With "We must move forwards, not backwards, upwards, not forwards," and twirling, twirling, twirling towards freedom. I look forward to an orderly election that will remove the need for a violent bloodbath. There's also, what else is in that episode? Oh yes, it doesn't matter which one of us you vote for, your planet is doomed. Doomed! That's just absolutely beautiful. It's just, there's so much good stuff there. That episode is just gold. Like, wall to wall. It's only like, I think it's 9 minutes long, because it has to fit inside a Halloween special with 2 other, like, short skits. It's just wall to wall gold. It's my favourite thing The Simpsons ever did. And like, all of my favourite quotes are from that one bit. Going back to the Life is Strange Before the Storm livestream for the first time, you and Claire mentioned you preferred Myers-Briggs to the, in my opinion, much more informative Anenagram. What do you like about Myers-Briggs? Honestly, I've not done enough research into it versus its competitors to give you an informed opinion. I just would say I did it once with work and I thought the result sounded good. Now, there might be an element of confirmation bias there, insofar as, you know, you overlook the stuff that doesn't match and then just look at the stuff that does match and think, oh yes, it clearly works hugely well. So, you know, there's an element of confirmation bias going on, I'm sure. I just happened to look at the Myers-Briggs results and think, yes, that feels like a good match for me. But it really was just a case of, you know, that was just me finger in the airing it. There was no element of me doing an in-depth scientific view there. I just happened to have done Myers-Briggs and happened to have liked the results. Which, by the way, at the time was INTP, but I think, like, since then, I've definitely got a bit more INTJ. John, I love watching you and other people play video games. I'm quite a new player myself. What games would you recommend that are good for beginners? I'd actually recommend platformers. I think platforming as a genre is a case of it's very easy to pick up and not that difficult to master. The genre has always been potentially pitched at a, well, and I don't mean this to sound wrong, it's pitched at a younger level, meaning there's not a huge amount of complexity to it. The puzzles tend to be a bit on the simple side. Mechanically, they tend to have fairly simple mechanics once you've got to grips with them. So I'd say for beginners, a platformer might be just the thing. So something like A Hat in Time might be something of interest. If you actually have an Xbox, though, you could get Rare Replay, and then you'd have access to Banjo-Kazooie. Yeah, Banjo-Kazooie must be in there. So yeah, Banjo-Kazooie I think is probably a really good game for a beginner, to kind of as an introduction to the genre. And yeah, a simple, fun game that's easy to get your head around. I've been away for a couple of months. What videos of yours from last month would you recommend watching? I think my best is probably Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades, Drive San Francisco, and Thief of Thieves. Start there and see how you go. Do you think BioWare will or should go back to the Mass Effect universe? And would you like to see the Andromeda storyline continued? I'm pretty sure they will. Like, they wouldn't let a franchise that's been that popular just die after one game that wasn't even bad, it was just fine and wasn't exactly beloved by the fan base. I suspect they'll just do a redo and we will not see the Andromeda storyline continued. I think they'll do something else back in the old galaxy, something a bit more traditional in some form or other. So I definitely think they will, but I suspect Andromeda will just be quietly abandoned. For the next few months, I'll likely be ill, out of the job and recovering from major surgery, with my potential only form of income being from art, Patreon and streaming. Do you have any advice for total beginners on the Patreon streaming front? I'm not sure I'm necessarily going to be able to provide like a huge amount of advice in that regard. Like, what I did was I didn't like start doing Patreon until I had like, I think it was about 75,000 subscribers on YouTube. and I didn't actually start regularly streaming until we were into the hundreds of thousands. So I had like a good baseline built in already. Like, all I can really do, therefore, from someone who's like, from the sounds of it, I'm sorry if I've misread this, but from the sounds of it, someone who's starting off without like that sort of base somewhere else to launch from is kind of repeat what I think is the best and most sensible advice I myself have heard, which is consistency is very, very important. So, you know, if you want to do something, do it on a consistent basis so people know they've got something to come back to, so they've actually got a reason to come back, they've got a reason to subscribe or what have you, and check you out on a regular basis. And my personal kind of take on content, which is do something you are uniquely qualified to do. It doesn't matter whether it's something you're uniquely knowledgeable about or uniquely skilled at or uniquely hate so much that you can tear it apart. Do something that is unique to you. Something that you can do differently. Not necessarily even better, just something that you can do differently to everyone else. And good luck. Good luck, because it's a difficult space to break into. It's a very competitive space. John, the devil appears before you to challenge you for your soul and demands terms. What are the terms of the contest and how do you defeat the devil? Well, I challenged the devil to a fiddle contest and then wave his own fiddle at him because I won it previously in the fiddle contest, and the devil simply has to concede because he doesn't have a fiddle anymore. Ah, you see, I was playing the long game this whole time. John, have you watched the new series of Orange is the New Black that's just been released? No. Claire and I were about, like, I think we got halfway through season 4, and for whatever reason, we just kind of dropped out of it. So we need to catch up with season 4 first. And wait, is this new season, is this 5 or 6? I don't know. Right, we need to get caught up with that, because I really enjoyed Orange is the New Black. What are good books to read to learn about ancient Rome? I'd say for some light reading to start off with, don't just like dive into textbooks straight away. Find yourself some good historical fiction. I would recommend Robert Harris. He's written some really fun historical fiction novels set in Rome. Start with them. I think he's done some really fun ones on Cicero in particular. If you enjoy them, then maybe consider textbooks. But start with historical fiction because they're fun. John, you wake up and discover you've been made the captain of a starship and we, your patrons, are the crew. How far do you think we make it through the dangerous universe before... I think we've already blown up. I think we blow up before the end of this sentence, Teddy. I'm going to be honest. I don't think we're making it very far because I'm not sure any of us know how to utilise a warp core. Is there any video title you're particularly proud of? Yes, Raft. Raft's title was Sharks and Wreck. Wreck spelt as in shipwreck. Alright, I was really proud of that one. I think that's the best one I ever came up with. If Assassin's Creed Odyssey has a discovery mode like Origins, would you consider a playthrough that was specifically of the educational content with supplements from your own knowledge? Ooh, I hadn't considered that, but I'm considering it now. Good call, I might do that. What made you decide to start Crusader Kings 2 out of all the games that people constantly request from you? 1, it came up an awful lot. 2, it was a Paradox Grand Strategy, and I knew from Stellaris I already liked those. And 3, if I wanted to get into a Paradox kind of grand strategy game, just in terms of chronology, that was the first one in case I did want to do the Taking an Empire through multiple games one. So that was kind of how we came to that. Which brand of Jaffa cakes do you buy? The standard one is just the McVitie's Jaffa cakes, though you do mention the M&S brand one, so I imagine are very nice, though I must have had them at some point, but I can't remember. But yeah, kind of like the default brand is the McVitie's Jaffa cake. So if you want to kind of, you know, have the exact experience me and Claire have, that's the one you want to get. Could you convince Matt and Dan to record a bonus episode of Lost in the USA where you all have the fastest vehicles and map UI GPS? After your 8-year, 748-part series is over, I'm curious how quickly it could theoretically have gone. I'm afraid we cannot do that because we have actually already recorded it. We have recorded the entire series already. So we've put that one to bed and we're already discussing future projects. So sadly, it is too late to toss extra challenges on the end. Plus, it's got a really fun ending. It's got a really fun ending to it. So we shall see. We shall see. After the Darwin Project video, any other community playday type events planned in the future? Ooh, I don't have any just yet. I don't know what the next one's going to be, but watch this space, you'll be the first to hear when there is one. How deliberate are the Crusader King 2 shenanigans? Were you aiming for it to be this mad, or has it just sort of happened? You think this is mad? Oh, bloody hell. This is calm. What's coming up is lunacy compared to what's happened so far. John, I've noticed you don't play World War RTS games, Company of Heroes, Hearts of Iron, Steel Division. Is there a reason for it? Not really. To be honest, I do enjoy a good RTS game. This is, yeah, chalk this one up to absolute, complete, total coincidence. In terms of Crusader Kings 2, given the open-ended nature of the game having no set end goal, where do you see the series ending? Yeah, I think it'll just be when I feel is right. There'll just be a nice time for it, I feel. Like, I don't know when it's going to be. It's going to come into focus for me as I go along, but I'll know the moment when I see it. Alright, just trust me on this one. I'll know it when I see it. Recommendation for Freedom Force from 2002. That rings a bell, actually. I think I know a little bit about that one. I shall add it to the long list. Any chance of getting a series on GTA 5? Interesting. Honestly, probably not. Like, the campaign for me is fine for GTA 5. I've already done it. I actually played that without recording it. I was just curious where it went, so I just played that for myself. And I've played a bit of online. I'm not super into that. Like, I personally find GTA 5 fine, but it's not my favourite open world game. So, to be honest, the chances of more videos on it is very, very low. Are there any challenge runs you've thought of for certain games that you haven't done because they may be fun for you, you're not sure the channel would enjoy it? Not so much, but as I was kind of briefly touching on earlier with an earlier question, there are plenty of challenge runs that get brought up that I don't do even though I think they would be fun because they're not different enough to stuff I've done previously. That's often actually the limiting factor, that either they're not difficult enough or they're not different enough. For example, so yeah, like a melee-only run of New Vegas would be too similar to what I did in Kill Everything, and no trading in Fallout 4 just isn't different enough to, well, just a generic playthrough, for the most part, to be honest, because for the most part, you're not doing much buying and selling in Fallout 4. You can make it buy with scrapping and building and quest rewards, like, very happily, without actually bothering to trade for the vast majority of the time. So that's often the limiting factor, rather than because I'm not sure the channel would enjoy it. Are live stream highlights a thing of the past? For the moment they are, if only because, like, I'll do them for a series, potentially. Like, for the one-offs, I'm not sure there's much point. They didn't get a huge amount of, in fact, they got very few views. They got slightly more views than just the actual full live streams, but only if they were really heavily edited down. Lightly edited ones, it makes no difference whatsoever. So they might return when I start a new series, but they are also, they're a lot of work. Like, you know, they take more time to edit than just about anything else, and they're less viewed than anything else. So it's really a bit of a waste of time, to be honest. So they might be back, they might not. John, The Witcher 3 needs you and you need The Witcher. Need to play The Witcher 2 first, but watch this space. I'm hoping that will happen this year, perhaps. If you had to live in any one video game universe, which would it be? Ooh, my time at Porsche. It just seems to be a really happy place, where, you know, you don't have to be a farmer. Like, you know, it's similar to the answer Stardew Valley, but in Stardew Valley, you seem to basically have no choice but to engage in back-breaking farm labour. But no, in my time at Porsche, you can just basically do whatever you want. It just seems like a charming place, but without compulsory farming, so best of both worlds. John, have you seen 2 Point Hospital? Oh yes, I've got my eye on that one. You can all sing along with that. Absolutely, we'll be covering that when it comes along. Will you ever trust any human ever again? Not if they're in a stream chat, I won't, Paul. No, I won't. And another one, what do you think about the idea of a timeline in Stellaris showing when wars started and ended, expansion, major discoveries, etc.? That is a nice idea. I like that. It would give a kind of sense of scale and progress to the universe. It's actually one of the things I really like about Civ 6 Rise and Fall, that it's actually now got the timeline you can scroll back through. It's not very useful to scroll back through it, but it does give a sense of achievement to things happening, which is very, very nice indeed. And that is the end. It's been quite a few hours, and this room has heated up quite significantly. I'm quite hot. I need to go, chill out, maybe splash myself with some cold water, have a nice glass of water as well. That'd be absolutely marvellous. Thank you all so very, very much for being here, just, you know, in general, because in this age where YouTube consistently messes everything up and ad revenue is total garbage and remains in the toilet, and every time we think it can't get any lower, it gets a bit lower, You guys, you know, you literally keep this going. You guys literally keep this going. So thank you all so very, very much. I will see you hopefully in the Patroncast next month as well. But in the meantime, I've been John. It's been many a true nerd, and this has been the July sort of 2018 Patroncast. Thank you very much, and goodbye.